what's happening in the UK right now, and you just see like massive amounts of people.
A lot of these riots are Muslims walking around with baseball bats and machetes and just beating the shit out of random white people. I have a major problem with Islam. Even before all the dementia stuff, this dude was notoriously stupid and corrupt at the same time. His wife dies in a very mysterious way in the 70s, and then in a car accident because of a drunk driver randomly, and then suddenly he's marrying the nanny, right, which is Jill.
Everyone admitted how unlikable she was, and they kind of pushed her to the side, and now she's powerful. I'm with her.
Every day that goes by that she's still the candidate, it looks like she's definitely going to be the candidate.
She is showing really impressive numbers.
Yeah, but Hillary showed really impressive numbers too in 2016. She got her ass kicked.
It's arguably inevitable that the global reserve changes from USD to something else.
I think the CIA created Bitcoin as a beta test.
I heard that recently, yeah.
Do you know what Satoshi Nakamoto means in Japanese?
No, I don't.
Central Intelligence.
Really?
Look it up.
Thank you so much for flying to North Carolina. I'm so excited for this.
Here.
Of course. Yeah, I've been watching your interviews, and then I've been seeing some of the clips that you were sending me, and I was like, I need to be prepared because you have such a good stage presence. Like, you get really fired up. And I just basically, like, I have a whole bunch of, I guess, regular culture, current events. I want your perspective on like a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
So I was looking up some Russell Brand stuff today, and I think there was also some InfoWars that was doing clips on what's happening in the UK right now, and you just see like massive amounts of people.
Yep.
What's happening?
Well,
and are they okay?
As far as I understand it, the UK has allowed refugees and migrants from all over the world into their country, basically from all over Europe into their country because of bad political practices, policy. And as a result of that, there is this strife and division that's been created because when these migrants commit a crime, then so many times that kind of thing can happen before the locals, the natives, get really frustrated. So the most recent development, as I understand it, is 3 little girls were murdered by somebody who wasn't actually a migrant, but whose parents were Rwandan. This is somebody who is in the country, not an Englishman, 17 years old, I believe, stabbed basically 3 little girls outside of a dance class, a Taylor Swift themed dance class. And that's when everybody went ballistic.
Oh, wow.
And then the government in the UK is cracking down on white extremism, or Islamophobia as they call it. But a lot of these riots are Muslims walking around with baseball bats and machetes and just beating the shit out of random white people. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going on as I understand it. And the way I look at the UK and Europe is like foreshadowing for the United States. So we have the benefit of being an entire ocean away from all the problems in the Middle East, the problems in Europe, but we still have some similar policies that the UK has and other countries in Europe have that have created problems for them, where our border is being invaded by people from all over the world through the southern border. And ultimately what that's going to do in time is exactly what we're seeing in the UK right now. It's going to create strife and problems because it's not that I have an anti-immigration perspective, but immigration is supposed to come with assimilation. Like when our ancestors came here from wherever, mine came over in 1893 from Switzerland, they learn how to speak English and they become Americans. But when you have a migrant policy that's not a citizenship policy, it's not an immigration policy, it's just adopting migrants suddenly, then they come over here, they refuse to assimilate, and then you have conflict between the cultures. So people can come here all they want as long as they become Americans, or people can go to England all they want as long as they become English. But when you have major swaths of people going into a new location, not assimilating, then you have conflict. I mean, if you think about the United States, for example, people came over here for hundreds of years before the United States was founded, and there was tons of conflict with the Native Americans and us, or Europeans, because the Europeans didn't come over here to assimilate. If they would have come here and like joined up with the Sioux, joined up with the Iroquois, that some did, like the Sam Houstons and others lived with the Indians and did that whole thing, and they were fine. But we didn't come here to assimilate, and that's why there was conflict. And so if you allow another group of people to come into your home that doesn't plan on actually becoming part of your culture, then eventually it's going to lead to violence.
So where's the line between, because I 100% agree with you, but where's the line between assimilation and then holding on to your culture? So if you come here and like you're Italian or Japanese or whatever, and you want to hold on to certain things, like what does assimilation mean to you?
That's a really good question. So I actually made a joke about this on air on Sunday night. I was like, look, people came over here and they kept a semblance of their culture, mainly cuisine. Yeah. Or like a Yule log if you're German, right? Maybe you throw a log in the fire every Christmas, but everything else is the same. So it's this idea that if you're going to come to America, then you should believe in things like mainly the Bill of Rights, in my opinion, and the language, of course, too. But things like freedom of speech and freedom of religion, freedom of press, right to bear arms, that kind of stuff. We should not be accepting anybody in this country that doesn't just like solemnly swear to the Bill of Rights, in my opinion. I don't really care about anything after the first 10. That's the Bill of Rights. I'm, questionable on some of the other ones post facto, but Bill of Rights is like the number one thing that comes to mind. And understanding the difference between a democracy and a republic, supporting the notion of America as a republic, and then learning the language, I think that's enough. It's not that complicated. It's not supposed to be like an epic exclusive club, but when you have 30,000 people since October coming into the United States from the CCP illegally through the southern border, when in 2021 the number of Chinese that were captured at the border was like 327, you realize like, okay, it's impossible to get out of the CCP illegally.
Right.
So they're sending tens of thousands of people here by order. Like that freaks me out, I
was just going to ask that because you're not leaving without them knowing.
Right. It's like there's totally an invasion happening right now. And the thing is, when there's a conflict then with Iran or Hezbollah or Hamas or whatever, any of these radical Middle Eastern, basically Muslim organizations, then they can activate all the sleeper cells. So do you think that it's a coincidence that what's happening in the UK now is happening all in the context of the fact that Iran is about ready to go war with Israel over this October 7th terrorist attack stuff that happened between the Gazans and this carpet bombing that's happening from Israel and the Gazans? Like, it's all related. And the Muslim community that doesn't assimilate with the Western cultures absolutely pays attention to and follows the orders of Muslim leaders in other countries. So when there's things called for like violence right away, like it manifests and propagates it all across the world. So yeah, I think it's a major problem. And we have freedom of religion in the United States, but I'll just plain tell you that I have a major problem with Islam. I personally do. There's a couple of reasons I do. One of the reasons is the notion of Sharia law, I think, is completely incompatible with our culture. And we can't ban a religion here in the United States. I don't think that we should. But we can enact policies that make it very difficult for people from these nations to get here, right? So what is the terrorist backing? Are you married to your cousin? Things like that. And I'm not saying that as a joke. 40% of people in the Middle East are married to either their first or second cousin. And you want to talk about the Olympics, this man that just beat the hell out of this woman, arguable whether it's a man or not, XY chromosomes, maybe it's a woman. I can't remember the name of the lady. This has been major controversy over the last 2 weeks, but she's from Algeria, in a rural part of Algeria where the cousin marriage rate in Algeria is 40%, and recessive genetic disorders are incredibly prominent if you're marrying your first and second cousin. So it's possible to be born with an XY chromosome and female genitalia, right? There are several genetic disorders that are associated with it. So I believe that she was raised as a girl her entire life. She displayed as a girl when she was born. But this is somebody who's genetically male and just doesn't express that way, right? And so that's just one example. When you look at like IQs and behavior issues, I believe that like 30% of all recessive genetic disorders in the United Kingdom were associated with the Muslim community, even though it was only 3% 10 years ago of the population, because of the cousin marriage issue. So honestly, if there was just some sort of I don't advocate for a global government, but if there was some sort of a global law that just made it illegal to marry your first or second cousin, I think a lot of these tensions would go away, because ultimately I think it's because they're angry and retarded. Well, seriously, like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be like bigoted or whatever, and it's not to do with race. It's just if you marry your cousins for 1,000 years, you're going to be angry and retarded. Like it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's bad stuff.
Yeah, but then you pass the law and it's not stopping the act that is creating children, so maybe it just doesn't happen legally or through the government.
Maybe it's got to be a cultural thing. Maybe you got to convince the leaders in these mosques and things to really encourage people to not marry their cousins. And I understand if you're in a rural community, there's only 17 people, maybe your cousin starts looking pretty good. But come on,
get on your horse, go to the next town over, just for your future, the future of your children. I agree. You can't outlaw religions, but we outlaw a lot of practices. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I had this woman on, and she's a really big proponent or critic of Islam. Like, she was married to someone that was I think like bin Laden's right hand guy. What is her name?
Man, could get things done.
Her last name's, it's not going to help because it's a common last name, but it's Mohammed, I think is her last name.
That's another thing too. They're always Muhammad.
Yeah. What is her? Oh, I'll find it and then have to put it in the show notes. But she was born in Vancouver, so like in the West, and beaten she was like a second wife, forced to live in the basement, and then she was talking about all of the statistics of little girls being rushed to the hospital in the UK and in Canada for genital mutilation because it's a common practice within that religion. And obviously those things should be illegal. So it's like you take these things that aren't aligned with our values and principles, and we have like a really hefty fine if we catch you doing that thing. So like, yeah, you can't outlaw the religion itself, but you can definitely outlaw like a lot of things that they find important.
Yeah, it's so disturbing, and ultimately the solution is to have policies that inhibit people like that from even coming into your country. And once they're in, then yes, that's I think the reactive response. Problem is, politically speaking, in the West, all over the European Union, in the UK, and in the United States, we elect people both locally and federally that are so sensitive to this diversity, equity, and inclusion philosophy, the feelings and wants and needs of these minority communities. They virtue signal and they display such affection for these minority groups, and they use it to exploit it for political power. And so you have this weird kind of circular thing where making your country worse is actually politically conducive to your success as a politician. Where like the more people are on welfare, that's making it worse, but that's the more people that will vote for you, right? Because they're dependent upon you. And so all of our leaders, and you see it just blatantly on display when you have like rape after rape and murder after murder and genital mutilation after genital mutilation constantly for decades in the United Kingdom. And then finally, when there's riots over it, even though both sides are rioting, the rhetoric from the leadership is only that these white right-wing extremists are responsible. It's like an ass kicking doesn't just come falling out of the sky in the wise words of Bill Burr, right? People don't just riot because they suddenly feel so racist and want to express it. It's always triggered, whether it was the Black Lives Matter people that were triggered or whether it's a right-wing thing that happens, right? I mean, I don't agree with the George Floyd protests. I think that he was addicted to fentanyl. There was a lot of problems there, but it wasn't just this like a random thing that the entire black community just decided to do out of nowhere. I mean, it's like a decade of seeing police brutality videos and algorithms on Facebook when Facebook was popular and Instagram, things like that. Like that builds, and then there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, and everybody acts like it's all of a sudden. So if there are right-wing people that are snapping in the streets, it's not just, you can't just explain it away with racism, right? Something has been deeply wrong. People are very reluctant to behave like that, to do things like that, to break out in civil war or conflict or rioting. They have to reach a breaking point in order to snap. I'm not, like, I have a bad temper. I'm somebody who is not angry at all for 6 months, and then I smash something. Like right now, I have a bruised up hand because I smashed a computer screen. Every 6 months, right? And it's not that bubbles. It's not that like one thing happened that made me snap. Like it's everything that I've been like stressed about or worried about over the course of 6 months, and then I snap for 5 minutes and break an object, and then I'm fine for another 6 months, right? It's just how I am. I know that it's inappropriate or ridiculous, but people are the same way on a macro scale as individuals, where it builds and it builds, and then you snap. And if you're refusing as a leader to look at why something is really happening, and you're just criticizing, that's just bad leadership. That's just stupid, ignorant, shortcut bullshit, in my opinion. Sorry for being ranting. This coffee is just really good.
No, the coffee is very good. Rant away. You're good at it. So how much do you think is stupidity, and how much do you think is like really malicious strategic planning? Because
I think it's 100% both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring it up. I know exactly what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Here's what's awesome. Traditionally about America, 20th century America, we had like terrible leaders, but they were fucking brilliant, right? Like Bill Clinton, definitely a rapist. I mean, he just is. Like, definitely a bad guy.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, Rhodes Scholar, not a stupid man, right? Barack Obama, probably an evil dude, not stupid,
no,
brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Now, Jordan Peterson says it best. He's like, if you're scared of what a strong man will do in power, just wait until you see what a weak man will do in power, right? Now we've reached some sort of a point, and maybe it's because our population is dumb now, and it didn't used to be 50 years ago, or we used to have a little bit more cultural consensus 50 years ago, so politicians would lie in a way that was consistent with the wants, needs, and interests of the people. But now our leaders are retarded and corrupt. Like Joe Biden, even before all the dementia stuff, I'm not even going to try to do the cheap shot of just saying that he's lost his mind. He has, but even before all the dementia stuff, This dude was notoriously stupid and corrupt at the same time. Lied about graduating at the top of his class in law school, which is why he had to drop out of the race in the 80s. His wife dies in a very mysterious way in the 70s, and then in a car accident because of a drunk driver randomly, and then suddenly he's marrying the nanny, right, which is Jill. Like,
I didn't know that.
You have to double check that shit, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Like, but the dude is notoriously corrupt, and people are always saying like, oh, well, who cares about Hunter Biden's laptop? Hunter Biden's not running for office. But if you look at the emails in the laptop, which you can, I think it's called BidenLaptopEmails.com, and you can search by keyword, you're like, oh shit. All of the people that are on the boards of directors of these companies that Joe Biden is pushing today for green energy are in the emails being invested in by Rosemont Seneca. Like when his son invests $500,000 in Rosemont Seneca the same year while Joe Biden's vice president, they get a $23.7 million contract from the Department of Defense to go to work in biolabs and in Wuhan and in Ukraine, right? Yeah. And so the dude's a moron and he's corrupt. Kamala Harris, retarded and corrupt. I mean, just look at Tulsi Gabbard's 60 to 90 second rant during the primary debates the last time. It's very obvious that we have a crisis of intelligence and a crisis of competence at the highest level. I would much rather have highly competent villains running things than just the most retarded ones, because at least we would have people that could cover their own tracks and, they could save the ball and it's like, if you're going to cheat, then do it with little elegance, but now they're just sloppy. I don't know. I think they're both stupid and corrupt.
So it's interesting because when Kamala was running, and then I think it was maybe even before they said that she was going to be the VP on Biden's ticket, like she was just obviously unlikable and no one was trying to pretend
like
that she was.
1% of the vote or something?
Yeah, it was abysmal.
Do you like her?
No, not at all. We're going to do like a little fun segment that one of my other producers put together, and it's going to be really funny.
Okay.
But like there's clearly like she just seems really neurotic and anxious a lot. Like she doesn't want to be anywhere that she's at. She's kind of forced to be there. And we're
right. Where are we again? Colombia. Okay, hello, Colombia.
Like, that cackle. I can't even do it, but it's so awful. But like everyone admitted how unlikable she was, and they kind of pushed her to the side. And then all of a sudden, she's going to be the main ticket, and now she's powerful. I'm with her.
Right.
What a strong leader. And how are we pivoting this so quickly? And what has changed, because she's been out of interviews for so long. So I don't and then you see people defending her. Destiny, who I typically really like. Do you know who Destiny is?
Fuck that guy. I challenged him to a duel and he declined.
Yeah. Your duel list is probably really long at this point.
It's just two. Just Harry Sisson and Destiny. You guys want to fight? It's still on.
And no responses to your duel?
Duel or Destiny said no.
Oh, okay. He said no.
And then Harry Sisson just pretends he didn't hear me.
So what are the laws for dueling in Texas?
In Texas, you can duel anyone, but not to the death.
Not to the death.
And not using deadly weapons.
Oh, so you can't use a gun.
So like if I'm like at a bar with you,
right,
in Texas, and some guy pisses me off, I can say, let's take this outside, and we can have a fist fight, and the cops cannot interfere.
Oh wow.
If it's consensual.
Okay.
Right. Uh-huh. And that's like what it comes from. Is the idea is like if you guys just need to work it out in the yard, like go work it out. But you can't kill each other, but you can. It's like, I don't know, Cool Hand Luke or something. If you've ever seen that movie.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
So basically, I've gotten to a point where I don't think that people like Harry Sisson and Destiny can be negotiated with. I don't think they can be debated with. And when Destiny came out and said, that he was going to make fun of Comparatore for being shot at the Trump rally, the poor man, the father, and then I was like, you know what? I just want to fucking kick your ass. Like, I'm not that tough, but I know I can beat the shit out of Destiny.
I was so surprised. I was so surprised at his response to all of that, because I normally am a fan of his.
Yeah, I was like 5 years ago too. I disagreed, but I was like, oh, this is a smart guy.
He puts his work in, and he does normally he makes valid points.
Ever since his wife left, I'm not trying to be a shithead. Ever since his fucking wife left him, I think he's been snowballing. I think he'll come back. I just think he's going through a crisis right now.
Yeah, something emotional.
Yeah, something personal is going on.
Yeah, but someone was bringing up the Tulsi Gabbard Kamala clip where like Tulsi just destroys her.
Yeah.
And he's saying, and it was mentioning her track record for withholding evidence and using prisoners
for people on death
labor.
Row.
Yeah,
prisoners for labor. Yeah,
going to jail for cannabis, and then
and she was arresting parents for their kids being truant in school too.
Which is crazy, because it's like if you're a single mom and you're already working 2 or 3 jobs, and
you definitely are if you live in California.
Right. And then your kid isn't going to school because there's no dad in the picture. The best answer is like, oh, go to jail. Like, how is that helping anyone?
She's a fucking terrible human being.
Yeah, terrible human being. And then Destiny's response to the cannabis stuff was that, oh, well, she doesn't pass laws. It's just her job to like prosecute.
Oh, just
them.
Following orders?
Just following orders.
They didn't work in Nuremberg, asshole.
I'm like,
that's not a good defense.
It's not a good defense. I mean, we should be so exhausted about that because it's like, where were we? We were in Florida and I was there for a podcast, and it's like a trivial example, but this is how important I think it is.
Yeah.
They have a really tight security at the place that I stay, and the guy wasn't letting me through the gate because for some reason my reservation wasn't showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, take my ID. Like, I'm there all the time. Take my ID, take my credit card, go grab a manager, like do something to let me in the gate. And he's like, and he's just being really difficult. My driver is like, what is going on? I'm like, and he was trying to get all like tosy with the guy's like, calm down, it's fine. Like, it doesn't know.
Tosy.
It doesn't even get like fisticuffs. And he's
Tosy?
like, tosy. Like, I don't know what I mean by tosy. Like
yeah,
you wanted to toe to toe.
I get it. Tosy. I never heard that before.
I coined it here.
That's great.
Tosy.
Are you getting tosy with me, bro? Jamie was getting tosy with me earlier. I thought we were going to fight.
I was up at 2 a.m. with baby chickens, and I need this. My brain's not working.
Shit, that's good. Anyway, so what happened?
So the guy was like, by the end of it, I finally get in, and they're super apologetic, and they're like, we're so sorry. We know you're here all the time. And he's like, I'm just doing my job. I was like, it's not. You're saying you have no choice in this matter. You have no autonomy, no agency. You're just like, you are a mindless bot to whatever you're, an
NPC.
Right. Yeah. You can't do that. You have to take accountability. And it's like, use your brain, problem solve, and do the right thing. You know what I mean? But no one does that. Yeah, absolutely. So on a micro level, if you see that, you have to call that out because then it can scale out and get really ugly.
If you're getting kickback from contractors because you're giving them 1,500 prisoners to help work on, graveling of roads or something like that, then it's just like the movie Shawshank Redemption. If you've ever seen that, that was the whole idea of the corruption behind that was the warden of the prison was using the prisoners to do labor and outcompete the competition, and he was getting kickbacks not to bid on the contracts. That was the subtle kind of side plot. And that's the kind of thing that our politicians do at the highest levels, whether they're governors, whether they're attorney generals, whether they're district attorneys. They're all funded by Soros. But to answer your question specifically about the flipping of the script, I think that what we saw with Kamala recently in the last couple of weeks with all of a sudden everybody supporting her so much is just indicative of the monopoly over the narrative that the left has. And there's a lot of terms that get used interchangeably, like leftist, Democrats, deep state. They're not all exactly the same thing, but they all are part of the same cabal, right? So it's like different entities on the same team, which is ultimately globalism. And what's happened ever since Project Mockingbird during the Cold War, when the CIA went in and infiltrated all the mainstream media outlets, we've had basically every major media outlet, whether it was television, print, or even social media, up until Elon bought X and kept it private, or reprivatized it rather. They've all been under the control of the government, and this has all been revealed. Even Mark Zuckerberg has not bragged about it, but admitted it when he was on Joe Rogan. He said that the CIA specifically called him to keep the Hunter Biden laptop story off of his platform. We know that they were manipulating and applying pressure to these social media platforms during COVID about vaccine information and things like that. And what's happened is there is such a monopoly over the mainstream media narrative, including legacy media and new media, that when they decide they want it to be Kamala, they just push the narrative, and so many people in our population are NPCs, non-player characters, that they just adopt whatever they're told from whatever logo that they believe, right? So if you're a CNN acolyte, or if you're an MSNBC acolyte, or if it's just you just trust your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, you're just going to adopt whatever you see stream in by default without any critical thought. And I think that's what we've seen here is we have a massive level of our population that is just totally in a cult. And there are cults on both sides too. There are cults where Donald Trump could literally just murder a baby and they'd be like, oh, but what did that baby do? You know what I mean? There are people like that, right? I support Donald Trump. I don't think he'd ever do that. So I'm not just trying to be unfair and say that only lefties are like this. I'm not trying to be that ignorant about human condition. We're all, susceptible and vulnerable to the same things, but there's definitely a disproportionate amount of leverage over the information that people are exposed to on behalf of the deep state, which is a leftist organization, which does support the Kamalas over the outsiders like Donald Trump. And I think that we're seeing the manifestation of that with how everyone on the left just was so ready to switch teams from Joe to Ho.
So do you think that that was part of the plan? Because wasn't there was this article that said that they were arguing to use the 25th Amendment against Biden and to have him step down. And then someone else was saying that Biden was kind of going against the, quote, deep state by picking Kamala. They actually wanted to run Hillary. And now he basically like fucked up their plan by doing that.
So.
Or do you think that it was Kamala the whole time?
My argument would be that I actually don't think Joe even wanted to run in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the deep state blackmailed him to run. And I think that's why they prosecuted his son, because he had to be president in order to pardon him. And so we're definitely going to see a pardon from Joe Biden for all the Hunter shit before the end of his term. And I think what happened was he transitioned, Joe did, from a useful idiot to a useless idiot when his cognitive decline got too severe. And I think that's when they first considered who the alternative should be, was after this debate, especially in June. I think the debate might have even been a setup to show the world how sick he really was.
Okay, so you don't think they were surprised by that?
I think there were a lot of people that were surprised about it, but not the insiders. I think the insiders set him up. Owens staff, people, Kamala's staff, even other. There was definitely a lot of conversation, I think, before that. That why would you let a man with cognitive decline do a debate at 9 p.m. for an hour and a half straight? I mean, my dad is 75. He doesn't have cognitive decline. I would never schedule a debate for him at 9 p.m. He goes to bed at 8:22 every night, right? Literally, it's a family joke. 8:22 p.m. Oh, Dad, you going to bed? Yeah, I'm exhausted. Smart guy, but you reach a certain age and you just get tired early, right? And more often throughout the day. Like if he was going to do debate, why don't you schedule it at noon then, or 6 at least when everyone's at home watching dinner, Not 9 p.m. It was obviously a setup. And I think Trump knew it was going to be a setup, so that's why he agreed to ridiculous terms like having it at CNN and all this BS around nobody in the audience, things like that. And Trump, if you go back and watch it, he basically just let Joe talk the whole time. I mean, usually in a debate, you're fighting for minutes with your opponent over time. And Trump just knew that if you let him talk, that it was going to be enough. So I think Joe was set up. I don't know whether or not they wanted it to be Kamala. I just think that they knew anybody else was going to be better. And maybe they were going to push for an open convention. But I can't say for certain that they picked Kamala, but I can say for certain that they undermined Joe.
And then do you think that anything's going to change at the DNC? When is that, in September?
I think it's this month, isn't it?
August?
Is it August? I think so.
August or September. It's coming up.
Maybe it's September. I can't remember. I think it's at the end of this month.
Okay.
It's virtual. And I don't know if it's even legally possible for them to switch because technically she has enough delegates. But so did Joe. So maybe they could push her out if she shows up as super unpopular on the polls. But they seem to have the polls fixed that she's got enough popularity to justify keeping her in the race. I think it's looking, every day that goes by that she's still the candidate, it looks like she's definitely going to be the candidate.
And it's so odd because they're showing the polls with her, Trump, and RFK, and she is showing really impressive numbers.
Yeah, but Hillary showed really impressive numbers too in 2016. She got her ass kicked.
So you don't think that they're that reliable? No?
No. And they always show you favorability versus who you're actually going to vote for.
And there's a big
I think there's a little bit of a difference. Like, you know, do you think Kamala would do a good job? No. Are you going to vote for her? Yes. Like, you know, it's possible that you think, but Trump would, you know, so I'm always questionable about the favorability thing because people will vote for somebody that they don't personally like if they think that they'd be a better president. So I don't know. I really don't trust the polls, especially after 2016.
So, yeah, that's true. That's true. And then to question that makes you a lunatic.
Maybe, but you have David Axelrod, who's one of the most famous left-wing Democratic campaign managers in history. He was Barack Obama's campaign manager in 2008. He did a masterclass with Karl Rove on how to win a campaign on the website masterclass.com, right? And he came out and said all the internal poll numbers were showing that she was behind in every swing state. So if he is going on CNN saying that their internal poll numbers say she's behind, but all the public poll numbers say that she's ahead by 1 point or 2 points, it's like, who the fuck is lying? You know, like obviously the public polls are bullshit. And by the way, when was the last time you were polled?
Well, I don't know how many of them are accurate. My phone has been crazy.
With polls?
Yes.
They ask you questions?
They just berate me, yes.
Do you answer?
No, because I don't ever know if it's a bot or if it's like China and everything's going to get hacked, so I just delete everything.
You answer?
No.
Are they texts?
They're texts, yeah. Click this link, or like I probably have one here, and they're always Democrat.
Did you used to vote for Democrats?
No, I'm registered independent, and I've only ever voted for Trump.
Awesome.
So,
this girl's cool.
Yeah. Let me see if I have it.
Do you think Trump's a Republican, or would you classify him as an independent?
I would say he's independent, and I think before he officially ran, I think he was probably leaning more Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also, regardless of any of that, I think once you have an assassination attempt on you, I think you're probably going to go right pretty quick.
Do you think people are going to forget?
I don't think they're going to forget, but I don't think that the power of it or the intensity
You wish
of
it would have happened like a week before.
I think that would be better for his outcome.
Maybe there'll be another try.
I hope not.
I mean, I hope they don't get him.
No, I know, me too.
But if there was another try the week before and he survived again, other ear.
Yeah, other ear. And then he'd just have like the 2 bandages.
Can you imagine?
Oh no. I saw Alex, he made the post right after, and he said that he thinks it's going to be poison, like that they're not going to stop, and he offered to help.
Whenever
with
I
the
hear
security
poison,
team.
though, I just think Game of Thrones, poison's a woman's weapon.
Yeah, me too.
Do you too?
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. I use a lot of references from that show in real life.
It's
like,
my comfort show.
Mine too.
Like whenever I'm like sad or I'm like or extremely happy, I always just start at the beginning.
I've started from the beginning, and this is probably embarrassing, from the beginning all the way through probably 12 times.
Yeah, I'm about there too. My wife hates the fucking show. She's like,
really?
"Oh, you're going through something?" I'm like, "Shut up."
No, we love it. It's like if you
Tyrion's my favorite.
Tyrion,
I drink and I know things.
Yes.
I have a coaster that says that shit.
Yeah, my husband has a sweater. It's like an ugly Christmas sweater that says that. Yeah, it's
That's
the best.
awesome.
I do the little finger exercise all the time where where he's like, imagine the worst possible thing like that this person would want, and then now work it back and like backcast it. What are they doing? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to figure out this person.
So then, what do you think about Kamala? I mean, the worst thing she could want is like ultimate power, right?
I don't know if we talked about NPCs. I don't know that she knows where she is at any given point.
I would not underestimate that woman.
Really?
I would not fucking underestimate that woman.
Like on Hillary level?
Because
Hillary, I would agree with Hillary.
There's a difference between being low IQ and having low verbal IQ.
Mm-hmm.
This is someone who sounds really stupid, and I know that I say she's retarded all the time,
mm-hmm.
but she's definitely politically savvy at some point. I mean, this is somebody who started from fucking nowhere and is now the vice president of the United States. It doesn't just happen. I'm very wary about underestimating her.
Well, there's also the rumors that she got there from other ways that don't require a lot of intelligence.
I understand, but look, there's a lot of girls that are willing to suck dick for a job and
don't end up as
VP. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And if you do have this cabal of the shadow government, does that person who wins presidency really have any power, like any real power?
Well, I think the way it works is you get elected, you go into the White House, and then I can't remember whose joke this originally is, so forgive me, I'm stealing this from somebody. Yeah. They show you the real film of JFK getting whacked and the real documents, and they're just like, you're going to play ball. And
you're like, sure.
Yeah, that's what happens 9 times out of 10. And so I think there is a little bit of autonomy. Obviously, the executive branch is important. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fighting so hard for it all the time, everyone. And the fact that they freak out so much about this race and they're trying to kill Trump implies to me that the executive branch is still important and that the elections still have some semblance of integrity. If the elections were totally canned and if the executive branch didn't matter anymore because the deep state had totally taken it over, then there just wouldn't be all this fuss about it. You know, maybe there'd be a little bit of fake fuss just for the sake of giving the public a sense of importance, but this is way elevated, escalated. I mean, it's more divisive and combative than ever before. So I think it's still real, but I just think that we've come from generations of leaders who have been part of the deep state rather than outsiders. So they get in and they just, especially since, post World War II, they just agree to play ball in the name of national security because the CIA and the FBI, they'll come and they'll talk to you and they'll say the reason you need to do this is because it's a national security imperative. And before there's been a lot of trust between the American people and the intelligence community, especially after 9/11. That's how they got the Patriot Act passed, especially after World War II during the Cold War. And before, we had a culture of just kind of, giving the intelligence communities the benefit of the doubt. So when they would ask a president for something or some policy, and everyone would be like, all right, if this is what you need, we'll give you this black budget. If this is what you need. But then it's like you realize that, like, wait, all these terrorist attacks happen and weird things like you find the guy's passport on the ground in New York City and on 9/11 that was in the plane, like his passport survived, but you can't find the black box, like weird shit like that. And then all of a sudden we're in this war and that war, and it all lines up with the goals of former intelligence leaders, and JFK gets assassinated, but they won't declassify any of the documents, and then you just realize after MK Ultra, they get caught giving LSD to Johns and brothels without them even knowing, and then all the documents were destroyed as soon as they got caught. You realize, like, holy shit, the CIA is the terrorist organization, right? And I think Trump was one of the first presidents, other than JFK. JFK, I think, figured it out before anybody else. That's why they whacked him. I think Trump was one of the first presidents of the United States that figured out that our own intelligence community is fucked up. I mean, he hired his own private intelligence when he was the president of the United States because he knew that the CIA and other leadership wasn't giving him accurate information, intentionally giving him misinformation in the Oval Office. And so he hired his own intelligence, private, to give him details that he needed to run the country. And so there's definitely a schism going on, I think, in our government, big time.
So to get rid of that, because that was one of Vivek's main running points, is that he was going to basically abolish all of these alphabet agencies. Is it just simply defunding them, or is it much more complicated than that? Because I think what should happen is that whoever is coming in does use a private third party for intelligence, because then there's not all of this red tape either. So you're getting more accurate information and you can act on it better, I would imagine, like more swiftly than if it's actually through the government. So do you just cut the funding and say, hey, we're not going to pay for all of this anymore, for you to spy on your citizens, for you to actually be a threat to democracy, to start all of these forever wars? Like, how do we get rid of that or solve that problem?
That's what I would do.
Yeah,
I would. And the thing is, defunding them is difficult because you have to have Congress agree to pass a budget that doesn't fund them. And you can veto any budget as president, but then you have government shutdown that you're faced with, and that's exactly what I would do. Is I would totally refuse to sign any legislation that funded the CIA or the FBI in any capacity whatsoever, and you just veto everything that gets put. And then we're gonna have a government shutdown, and fine. And you can also keep firing directors too. That's the other thing too. So you can fire Comey's over and over again. You can fire the director of the CIA over and over again, and just make it a directorless organization forever. And there are ways to undermine it, but it's definitely complicated and definitely have a different political backlash. But I would absolutely stop funding the largest terrorist organization in the world as soon as possible by any means necessary if I was president. Yeah. So I think that's what Vivek has in mind. I don't know what Trump has in mind. He's smart. I trust him. And I think he knows now that they tried to kill him that he needs to shut it down. So
have you seen there's all of these typical right-wing pundits and influencers, if you will, that were normally really big Trump fans. And then there was something circulating about his questionable stance on the Second Amendment. So then you had a lot of people vote.
Are you talking about Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yeah.
But he backpedaled.
What did he say?
He literally within 12 hours said, I changed my mind. I'm voting for him.
Weird. I mean, he probably just got attacked so much online.
He got attacked relentlessly, but he said he spoke with the Trump campaign, and he's confident that...
So he changed his mind?
He totally changed his mind. Yeah. They called him. They're like, dude...
So there's no water, to any of that? Like, there's no... I didn't see what the accusations were, but they were basically saying that he's, for a lot of
there were some things that he did while he was... There were some comments that he's made and policies that he passed that were somewhat considered anti-Second Amendment. So after, do you remember the Las Vegas shooting, Mandalay Bay? I think Trump signed legislation that banned bump stocks for a while, because that was what was used to make a semi-automatic gun fire like an automatic weapon. It's what happens is you pull the trigger, the recoil bumps off of your shoulder, and then it causes you to pull the trigger really fast, so that even though it's not an automatic weapon, it fires like one. I think Trump banned bump stocks. I think the Supreme Court overturned that. And he's also made comments about red flag laws, arrest, ask questions, take the gun away, and then, find out later if you need to. He's made some comments like that in the past, but I think they were taken out of context, and I just don't think there was any muscle to them, because the fact of the matter is we know that the leftists literally just want to seize all your fucking guns, even if they're handguns, even if they only have magazine capacity of 10. We know that their goal is to just totally disarm the American people. And so if it's between Trump and Kamala, then it's pretty obvious that if you're a Second Amendment person, your best option is going to be Trump, I think. Yeah. So, yes, there was a little bit of backlash this week with a couple of influencers, including Kyle Rittenhouse, who even, backpedaled himself off of that, saying that they had concerns about Trump's Second Amendment policies. But you got to keep in mind, too, that I think a lot of the times when there's substantial amount of pressure applied to Trump from the right, it's actually an effort to change Trump's policies. So, like in 2016, after Hillary Clinton stole the primary election from Bernie Sanders, Bernie endorsed her, even though the primary was stolen from him, by weird voice votes that were counted improperly. I don't know if you remember back in 2016, it was very controversial the way that she got the candidacy. A lot of Bernie supporters ended up voting for Trump because they were so bitter about the way Hillary stole the primary from Bernie.
Imagine that. Going from Bernie to Trump.
Right. And so they but Bernie endorsed Hillary, and it was because she agreed to change a lot of her healthcare policy. I believe it was healthcare.
Okay.
So a lot of times when you have pressure from your own side in politics, is because they're trying to shift the policies of whoever's going to be the candidate or going to win a little bit more in the right wing direction. And I think that's kind of what we witnessed the last couple of weeks, as a lot of people on the right, expressing reluctance about supporting Trump in order to ensure that Trump would double down on the right policies to kind of keep him in the fold.
And then do you think RFK is going to mess anything up?
I mean, I fucking hate RFK.
Why?
Okay, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff about RFK that you have to double check.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough.
The first thing that bothers me about RFK is that he's got several close members of his family that have been assassinated by the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hires as his campaign manager a woman who is former CIA, who is officially married his son. So not only has he allowed the organization that has assassinated his family to run his campaign, but that organization is now married into his family. So what the fuck, right? First of all.
I thought she was like a marketing lady.
Yeah. Look it up. Former CIA.
Oh,
it's on her
gosh.
Wikipedia. She's technically co-chair, I think. But yeah, no, he hired her.
But yeah.
Yeah, she's running his campaign. The CIA is running his campaign. That's the first reason. Second reason is if you look into how his first wife died, I think it was his first wife, she hanged herself in the barn. And then they had a funeral in the family cemetery where she was buried next to the family, and they did a photo shoot of everybody crying and shit. Then like within a week, they moved her body to like a remote unmarked corner of the cemetery. Like, so they like acted like they were burying her next to all the Kennedys, and they fucking moved her body. I just think the fucking dude's a skis. I think he's a CIA plant for real.
Really?
I really do, yeah. And I think he was in there to split the vote away from Trump because he's got this anti-vaccine stance, and there's a lot of people that would support Trump, but they're so pissed off about Operation Warp Speed and the vaccines that they're thinking like RFK is a really good, I just think he's a skis. I don't trust the guy as far as I can fucking throw him.
Oh, really?
I could be wrong about him. Everybody should double check everything I said. But when I looked into it, I was like excited about him. And then I was like, fuck this guy.
I like a lot. I mean, I'm
sure I love hanging out with him. Like, he's charming as fuck,
Mm-hmm. Seems like a real person.
Yeah.
He seems anti-establishment. But if this lady actually is working for or has worked for the CIA, then that is
100%. As like an undercover agent overseas, I think. I can't. It's been a long time since I read about it, but I read enough to know that I was done with it.
You can't do that. No, you certainly can't do that. Oh, bummer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after this, honestly,
the fact that they didn't make him the candidate is bullshit. Like, that's another thing. Like the Democrats had it so canned. It's like, dude, you got a Kennedy running as an independent. You refused to let him on the ballot. And that's why he had to run as independent. Now you're not even going to give him a shot at the fucking convention. Like,
you lost the plot. Like I feel like if he ran,
RFK would have fucking beat Trump
as a Democrat for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
They fucked up, but he's probably out of control. That's probably why they didn't do it.
Right, which is why when they're like, oh, Trump is a threat to democracy, I'm like, you don't actually think that, because if you did, you would have let RFK
You know how many times it even says the word democracy in the Constitution?
Zero.
It says it's a republic.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate it when both Republicans and Democrats even talk about
democracy.
democracy.
Why do we do that? Why do we say that?
Because it's fucking brainwashing bullshit. Democracy sucks. Democracy is the number one cause of tyranny. Every single democracy within 300 years has been a fucking tyranny, like literally dictatorship. Every time. I don't know why people act like it's so great. It's this idea, like, here's the deal. Here's the real reason it's bullshit. I even have a whole chapter in my book called Overcoming Democracy. You have the Democrats, literally named after democracy. All they do is advocate for minorities. Mm-hmm. The definition of a minority community is that it's the minority. Mm-hmm. In a democracy, you have to have a majority to win. So how can you claim to support democracy but simultaneously only advocate for minorities? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. Like the idea, like they're so counter. They use the term exploitatively to trick people into thinking that they're the party that represents the interests of the people. Like, oh, you want to do what's good for most people. Oh, you want to do what's good. But the whole point of a republic is to protect individual rights against the demands of the mob. Mm-hmm. So, like, let's just say hypothetically we arrive at a place here in the United States where white people become 30 or 40% of the population, and the other portions of the population just say we don't feel comfortable with white people owning firearms, and they just pass a law like, no, that's why we have the Second Amendment, so that the mob cannot overrule the rights of the individual. Like, you cannot claim to be a proponent or a supporter of minority rights if you don't support individual rights, because the individual is the greatest minority of all. And so I just hate the term democracy. I think it's abused and exploited. And I understand that we're a republic with democratic processes. I believe in elections and things like that. But like, this notion of democracy, it has a subtle implication that the will of the people is somehow like divine and superior to the actual rights of the individual. and they're often at conflict with what most people want. Like, if you want to look at democracy, look at the video of Rodney King getting his ass kicked. Or if you want to look at democracy, look at the Jews getting the glass windows of their stores and shops busted by bricks in Germany during the Kristallnacht. Like, that's democracy. Most of the Germans fucking hated the Jews, so they had the right to just fucking put them in camps. Like, fuck democracy. I fucking hate it. Like, it's this piece of shit form of government. No democracy's ever lasted more than 300 years. It's trash. So yeah, a constitutional republic is far superior, and that's why there's a reason the word democracy isn't mentioned in our Constitution, and there's a reason that our founding fathers explicitly stood up against the word democracy. You have a republic if you can keep it. Fuck your democracy.
And even that seems it doesn't seem like the best representation either, because if you look at New York is a great example. You have the city, which I understand is, highly concentrated compared to upstate, but they're totally different. Like, you wouldn't even think you were in the same place if you go from Manhattan to something like Albany.
I grew up in Illinois. Chicago's like a whole different planet.
So why is it that like the city is dictating the entire state? That also doesn't seem fair, because you have the real people like that still have their feet on the ground and they understand reality, but they're being affected by people that are putting themselves in like a really stressful situation, which I think warps people's minds. Like, if you put a whole bunch of people into a city and you're stacked on top of each other,
we're not supposed to live like that.
You're not supposed to, and it makes the way you see people also get really jaded, and you start to assume the worst. So then
Have you been to New York?
Yeah, I'm from upstate originally,
Yeah.
so I'd go to the city, and I loved it when I was young, and now I'm terrified every time that I go.
Yeah.
But you behave very differently in both conditions, and then if you're in one place for so long, I don't think that you have an accurate, like, your perspective on life isn't accurate.
I agree with you. Well, and it was interesting. I was talking to Tim, the driver, on the way over here. He lived in San Francisco, and he said, look, I was a major left-wing person after college, totally indoctrinated. He's like, and then I went to San Francisco and I immediately became a Republican. I was like, well, man, how is that though? Because there are millions of people that live in San Francisco that are leftists. He's like, because they haven't ever lived anywhere else. It's like, if you haven't lived anywhere else, you don't realize how much better it could be. I lived other places, then I moved to San Francisco. I was like, oh shit, this is where left-wing policies lead. Like, oh God, he saw. And so I think you're totally right. I think there's a lot of people in New York City that think that, there's New York City and then there's the rest of the world. And I've heard a lot of this when I lived in California. A lot of people, like, I live in Orange County, California. It's a bougie area. And a lot of people, refer to the Midwest as the flyover states and shit. And it's like shit that I fucking hate, because I grew up in Illinois. It is a flyover state technically, but like, those are the boys that fucking feed you and they go to war for you and they actually vote for the Republicans you claim to support so much. It's not your fucking coastal states, And so I do think there's something to be said for people who have always been wherever they are, thinking that the whole world is just like where they are and not understanding. And it's complicated the way that these cities have had disproportionate influence on the rural communities in their states and the way that our political system is set up. But I don't know what the solution is to that.
Right,
or
like,
if
is there
is
another
one.
way to do that or not?
Yeah, I don't know, because you just have so many people that live in the city. So from a voting standpoint, I guess if you would apply like an electoral college process at the state level, but I don't know. I just think making sure that people don't have their head up their ass is probably the solution. It's got to be good leadership at the state level. But I don't know. I don't know how to solve the ignorance of the city problem. It seems like it's a problem in every major city. Just
it really
leftism.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on your Hodge Twins episode, and you were saying you would rather be in a blue city in a red state than a red city in a blue state. And I thought that was really interesting because, so I was born in Southern California. My parents split, and then
What part?
Went, like Marina Del Rey area. So I did like the whole bi-coastal thing because Mom went to upstate New York and Dad stayed in California.
Oh, shit.
I know. So I had to do both. And he was a cop, very conservative, and then you have like these pockets like towards San Diego and Vista that are definitely red, and you can for kind of a minute forget that you're in California. Like, there's not as many homeless people, and people still love their country. Like, that's not offensive, but you don't have the rights that you would assume that you would in like a more conservative red-leaning place. So I always talk to my husband, I'm like, well, where do we really want to put roots down and be? Because North Carolina is super purple, like probably leaning a little bit blue, but it's purple. And I don't want to be, I feel like I don't want to be in a place that's like so like dug in on whatever team it is. So I do like the idea of like having a whole like a bunch of diversity of thought, but it does get scary at times when you're getting into an election season. You're like, well, are they going to change laws around, if like California, if you look at the laws that they have with parents and their kids, and the kids can transition and not tell their kids. Vermont, I think it was, just passed a law saying that they could force vaccines on children without parental consent, like the schools can.
Yeah.
And you see these states that are
if you send your kid to school on vaccine day, it's implicit consent is the language they're using. So like if you don't know it's vaccine day and your kid's at school.
There's a vaccine day?
Yeah, they do like all the kids at once.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know what state they were doing this. There's several school districts. There are a lot of school districts that do this. Not even several. I think like all over the country it happens all the time, like vaccine day.
Weird.
Yeah, like like the blood donor day. Did you have a blood donor day?
Yeah, we did do that.
Yeah, they do it, but like with vaccines. And if your kid's at school that day, they just assume.
They just do it.
They just do it. It's
interesting.
It's fucked up.
What if that kid has an allergy?
I don't know.
That's crazy. But yeah,
if he dies, he dies.
He dies, he dies.
Is that Rocky?
You sent him here.
If he dies, he dies.
Oh my God. Yeah, it just seems like I don't know. It's like where do you want to be?
Have you thought about Texas?
Yeah, Texas, and specifically Austin, because like we were looking at Austin too.
Well, there you go. You got a red state, but you got a purple city or a blue city.
It's very blue though.
Yeah, but who cares, man? If somebody messes with you in Austin, you can still pop a cap, no problem.
Yeah. So are you like towards the downtown area? Or
yeah.
Like, yeah, and it's not bad. It
no,
drive
I mean,
crazy?
It's bad. It's bad, but I carry a gun, so I always feel fine.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't like want my my daughters aren't teenagers, but were they teenagers, I would never let them go downtown by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But that's probably true of any like major city.
Probably. Well, kind of, because I remember I used to go to Austin for work all the time. And when I was younger, I'd go on 6th Street and I'd feel totally safe. Like I could go from like bar to bar.
I feel safe there, but I will say there's a serial killer there right now.
I heard, and they haven't caught him. It's the guy.
The Rainy Street Ripper, I think is what they're calling him.
He's drowning the frat guys.
Yeah, he's
gay. Still there.
Oh yeah, they're acting like he's not even a serial killer.
How?
You need to join like the my wife's in all these Facebook groups. They're like investigating it. You know, like, she's just like looking at all the details and shit. Like the rumors, like these guys that are like my age. Usually they're straight guys. Sometimes they're gay. Usually they're straight guys. Disappear and they're found drowned like the next day or a couple days later. And usually they're from not around. And they're lost or maybe like unfamiliar with the area. But I think somebody's like picking them up that's like an Uber driver and whacking them. That's what I think.
Oh, wow.
But it's definitely the same guy because I lived in Nashville for 7 years. And Broadway in Nashville, I don't know if you've ever been there, it is right by the Cumberland River, like literally adjacent. You can walk drunk and take a piss in the river. You can walk on the pedestrian bridge and jump into the river if you want to kill yourself. Like, you get trashed right by a large body of water, right? Nobody ever drowned. Like maybe it happened every couple of years. It's like every 6 weeks or one month, somebody's fallen into the river in Austin, Texas. And it's always the same demographic, always a male that was by himself in his early 30s. It's a serial killer. Yeah.
I agree. I thought that was like a consensus. Everyone knew it was a serial
killer. Oh no, the cops
killer.
are acting like it's just people getting drunk and drowning.
Are they doing? I guess you could be drunk when you get murdered, so that wouldn't. Really...
I mean, everybody who's in that part of town has been drinking.
Yeah.
You know, but like, listen, I've been trashed before. I've been trashed on boats and lakes before. I don't know if you've ever partied in a body of water before. I never came close to drowning. You know, you have to.
I definitely did once.
Because you were trashed?
Yeah.
What happened?
I was super drunk and we were on a boat, and I thought it was a great idea to just jump off the boat.
Yeah.
And
did you have a life vest on?
No, I did not.
They have to save you?
Not save me, but like. The boat was moving, so like not a good idea. I was.
Were
really
you like
young.
trying to stay above water? Like
no, I was. It was like kind of in the channel, so you shouldn't be jumping in. But I was out of my mind, drunk, and thought it would be fun and just swim way further than I could probably actually swim. So they had to turn like the boat around and get me. They're probably so pissed. I never did that again.
You ended up being fine though.
It was fine. Yeah,
I
didn't drown. No, I did not die. I did not die or come close to drowning, but like very bad decision.
But it's different than like jumping off of a boat than like being on the coast. Like,
right.
Nobody's like far from land.
Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're at Lady Bird Lake?
Isn't that where? No, that's not where I was. Isn't that where they're finding the bodies? Is Lady Bird Lake?
I don't know if that's what it's called. I thought Lady Bird was in California.
Are you sure you're from Austin?
I don't know.
Yeah, Lady Bird.
I thought it was called Lake Travis.
No, that's another one. That one's like out 20-30 minutes outside of
maybe it is Lady Burgley.
Yeah.
I literally go to the InfoWars headquarters and I go home, and then I go to the InfoWars headquarters and then I go home. That's my life.
No, don't go in that lake.
I'm not going there. I'm the demo of the serial killer.
Don't
He'd
bring
see
your
me and be like,
dog.
"Oh, that piece of ass needs to drown."
It's something like 12 people too, right?
It's more than that. I think it's happened like for several years now, like every month. Maybe it's only 12. I don't know. I need to talk to my wife. She's an expert on this whole thing. She's watching true crime on Netflix and she's scrolling on Facebook group about this.
I never understood that. Like all these women that are watching the true crime.
You're not into it?
No.
But you know about the serial killer?
Because so this is how I know. I was there for Drinking Bros podcast and they, I think, told me about it. And we didn't know that it was just men that were getting killed. I thought it was just
everyone. You
just
assumed it must have been beautiful women.
Probably, right? Because like serial killer, it's typically...
We're victims too.
I'm not trying to minimize the pain of men.
First it was Normandy, then this shit.
The matriarch strikes again. Yeah. But yeah, so they were telling us about it, and then we went downtown on 6th Street, where we went to a couple comedy shows and bouncing around, and there was this guy there, and he started following me around.
And you thought it was the Lady Bird.
And my friend was like, he's definitely the serial killer. And then he goes, I think I'm going to get out of here. You good? And the guy was still there. It's like, you are not leaving me to get murdered, to walk through my hotel room. What are you talking about? Pretend to be a gentleman. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I thought I was close to death.
But I'm glad you made it.
I know, me too.
But then I almost drowned.
Something else. Yeah. Do you think, I was trying to look up populism.
Mm-hmm.
Because you hear it a lot and you hear it get critiqued a lot.
Yeah.
What is populism for the average person that has no idea?
Yeah, it's very simple, but it's a great question. Populism is simply the belief that it's not about the left versus the right. Mm-hmm. It's about the people versus the political class. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Seems reasonable.
So you can be a left-wing populist or you can be a right-wing populist. Mm-hmm. It's not really a political side. It's just the belief that no one on the political class represents the interests of the people. And therefore, as a populist, I believe in taking power back from the political class and giving it into the hands of the people. I advocate for a right-wing populism, but the book's more generally about it.
Wasn't that one of the main critiques about Trump when he was first running? They're like, oh, he's a populist candidate. And
that's why everybody voted for him.
And they made him made like anyone who voted for someone because they were a populist sound like they were retarded.
Yeah.
Well, like why?
Well, I mean, obviously the political class hates populism because populism is about taking power away from the political class. So you even have Nancy Pelosi in a recent debate, I think in Oxford or somewhere in the UK, was talking about how populism was anti-democratic or a threat to democracy. Mm-hmm. It's like, you fucking idiot. Like, populism is, I mean, I don't advocate for democracy, but if you want to talk about the people, it's like a form of representation for the people that's superior to your bullshit democracy lies. So yeah, there's definitely a threat. The political class definitely feels threatened by populism. But the thing is, the more the political class fails us, and this is true for any nation throughout history, the more the political class has failed the people, whether you go back to the Weimar Republic or what's happening now in the United States, the more populist the people become. And it's not always populist right-wing or populist left-wing. It's kind of both. But what happened with the Nazis, originally only 1 in 40 Germans was actually a member of the Nazi Party until you have the crash of 29 and you have this hyperinflation. And then in 1933, they just took all power. And it was very unfortunate because they ended up being a very evil organization. But you have an entire people that suddenly became very convinced that their entire political establishment was corrupt in a very deep way, and they just totally supplant it with another populist organization. So Germany could have either gone populist communist, like Russia did, or China, but they went Hitler wasn't really right-wing like people say. It was like socialist. They went populist nationalist, which is what the fascism became, populist fascist, basically. And that's what I'm concerned about for the United States of America is, as this corruption manifests over the course of the next 4 years or so, the people are going to become more and more radicalized because they're going to be pissed off, feeling the suffering from the corruption of the political class. That I'm really worried that we're going to arrive in the same place that Germany arrived at in the late 1920s, where they choose between hardcore communism or hardcore fascism. And I'm trying to advocate for this other alternative way, which is like a much less fucked up version of either.
No, and you don't realize how possible that actually is. So the Weimar's Republic, I had never heard of that until very recently. Do you want to kind of debrief
so
on
Weimar
what that
Republic was basically the government of Germany during the Roaring '20s. after World War One, and they printed the hell out of their money to the point where you had to have like a wheelbarrow of cash to buy a loaf of bread. It was that bad. And people were using money as wallpaper and kindling for fire. It was so worthless. And it was called hyperinflation. Where right now we have inflation in the United States. They had hyperinflation where like every day the prices would go up 10%. And so the entire economy collapsed. And as people suffered, that was when the communists came in and people were really listening to communism, like maybe this is the solution because whatever we got going on right now doesn't work. And the fascists simultaneously came in and they were very anti-communist because it was a Jewish conspiracy in their mind. And the Jews were responsible for the failures of World War I in the Nazi mind, right? And the Nazis basically just won the argument, convinced the German people that, no, we don't trust these commies because they're Jews and we hate the Jews. That was the idea. And so we're going to go fascist, which is socialist. It's kind of got elements of communism in it, but it's not Jewish. It's German, right? And so that's what happened after the Weimar Republic collapsed. Basically, the Nazis were able to get a foothold. And it wasn't like the United States of America and Germany at the time. They had like dozens of parties. It wasn't like a left-wing versus right-wing thing. It's easy for us to think about it like that because that's what we're accustomed to. And we like to think about communist versus fascist. But there were like a shit ton of parties represented in Germany at the time. And what happened was the Nazis kind of eked their way into leadership. And all of the other parties were at a gridlock. And it was the Nazis were enough to just be so important to, shifting the vote either way on issues that they ended up getting all the leverage. And when the government collapsed, they were basically the only ones left standing. And so they just took it all. I mean, we're very close to experiencing this. And I believe that history is cyclical, not linear. And so I think we see a lot of things repeat or at least rhyme. I think what we're seeing right now in the 2020s is very similar to what was happening in the world in the 1920s. And I'm very concerned that should we experience a collapse over the next 4 or 5 years, that we're going to wind up either choosing between being communist or fascist. And I really don't want either of those things.
And the main difference is just private business.
Yeah. So in communism, there is no private property. But in fascism, you still have private property rights to a certain extent, but the government controls all the major industry still. So it's not the same as communism because communism has this whole Marxist collectivist ideal behind it.
And fascism doesn't.
But fascism is more like what we actually have now, where you can start your own business, but once you reach a certain size, then the CIA reaches out to your censorship department and asks you to take down certain accounts, right? So when you have the Googles of the world changing search results, and you have the Facebooks of the world and the Instagrams of the world and Twitter before it was X, having meetings regularly with the CIA about what accounts or narratives to shut down, like that's basically fascism. Even though the government doesn't technically own the business, there's so much political influence over all of industry. And in fascism too, you have to keep in mind too that since banking was so heavily associated with Jewishness in the eyes of the Germans, they totally redid the way banking was done. So after the Nazis took over, they eradicated the ability for any bank to loan money on interest to anyone. The only entity that banks could loan money on interest to was the Nazi Party for the war effort. So nobody had any debt in Germany because you legally couldn't get any debt. They like totally shifted the whole thing. And so it's just wild how different things became. And honestly, there were a lot of good things about it for the German people. It was just too bad that Hitler and the Nazi leadership was so evil because they made so many reckless decisions that ultimately led to the entire destruction of their whole country. And like within the course of like 6 years, like they were fine and then they were all gone. And that's what bad leadership can do.
No, absolutely. And then it's also when you look to one person to solve all of your issues, and when something is so out of control, then you end up wanting someone who's really stern because you're like kind of like with a child, or like if something gets out of control, then you need way more discipline. And I think people look to government as like daddy government oftentimes. When I was learning about the Weimar Republic, and correct me if I'm wrong because like again it's still very new to me, one of my co-hosts on the other show that I do was saying it was like during World War I basically like a lot of the Jewish people stayed behind. They didn't participate in the war efforts, which comes back to like why a lot of the Germans were blaming the Jews for the lost war effort. But because they were so heavily involved with banking, that they were the ones that were getting a lot of the people that stayed, like the wives, the mothers, the sisters, into incredible debt. And then they legalized sex work, which was really like out of sorts for that, especially for that time. And then there was like a lot of weird gender stuff that was happening where they were kind of perpetuating gender fluidity and like trans stuff. So these people come back from war, and then like their wives are in debt.
Their wives have mustaches,
and then
and then they're like really particular about their mustaches, and then suddenly they have the mustache.
Oh, God. And then it all escalated from there, and that's the Weimar Republic.
So I think it's kind of correct, but also kind of not correct. So I believe that the claim that Jews did not fight in the war on behalf of Germany has been pretty much debunked.
Okay.
I actually think that if you were Jewish, you were more likely to be sent to the front, according to some of the studies that I've seen. I don't know what's true or what isn't. But I will say that after when the Germans lost World War I, the soldiers and the people were incredibly surprised. And it was sudden. And I don't believe that Germany had lost any territory. So it's like, how the fuck do we lose this war if we're the only country that hasn't lost ground, you know? And I think what happened was everybody looked around, like somebody from the inside must have like given the country away, because first of all, the Treaty of Versailles was trash. Germany had to pay so much in reparations to the rest of Europe. It was like ungodly how much they had to pay. They were blamed for the start of the war, probably not even responsible. And it's like, we didn't even really lose. We didn't lose any ground. Like they were just like, what the fuck? So when they looked around, the only people that they saw that weren't really like German in their eyes were the Jews. Like, these are the only people among us who aren't like truly German, right? They must have been the ones responsible. Like, they're the ones that wouldn't give a fuck about us, right? And I think that's how it started. I don't actually think it had to do with a lot of these arguments against the Jews. I think came after the sentiment was established, and they're like looking for shit. Like, did you really go to the front? Were you really in the war? And yes, they were involved in banking, but I don't know. Like, you have to be careful. It's kind of like a chicken versus the egg, or egg. Yeah, which came first, chicken or the egg? And, which is, you know, pertinent because you have chickens now.
I do.
Right,
I do.
right.
Yeah.
And which came first? The egg, right?
The egg. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I think that a lot of these claims about what the Jews did in the 1920s and after World War I were actually largely fabricated out of response of just distrust that the Germans had for anybody that wasn't German. But I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not as
sense.
anti-Semitic as some of my counterparts.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not pro-Israel by any means, but I only care about America. So I'm not going to spend any time hating or loving anybody else.
Yeah, that one is tricky because I think I had the naivete for a long time of assuming that anytime we went into a war, there was a really good reason, like a noble reason.
Yeah.
And I have had that kind of veil lifted from my eyes. And then that sucks because you want to think that we're the good guy always.
I know.
And then you realize like we're very much
We haven't been for like 100 years.
Haven't been. And you see what happened. You see all the videos that happened from October 7th, and they're obviously like nothing short of evil. And,
yeah.
Right. Like,
and then you realize Israel let it happen, and it hurts even more.
And then you hear that, and you're like, how is that possible? Like, how under any circumstance would you allow that to happen to your people? And then what do you do? Because there is this narrative that Israel kind of is the last
democracy in the region,
right? And if they crumble, then the rest of the West is next, and then how scary that's going to be, and that, like, how much truth is there to that? And then everyone's like, well, no, Israel is actually a very powerful country, and they can defend themselves, and then we should not be getting involved.
So let me try to explain this as best as I can, in my opinion.
Okay.
Basically, every conflict, in my opinion, that we've been in since the 1950s has been an effort to keep the dollar as the global reserve currency. All the other economies of the world are dependent on it, and it's also how we are able to sanction countries like Iran, Russia, China, and others, because eventually, if you're doing trade with oil, you have to convert your money to dollars, and if you convert your money to dollars, then we can freeze it. And it's the central digital it's the global reserve currency as a result of that. So all the economies of the world are dependent on it. And as a result of this, Russia, China, and Iran have been trying to subvert the dollar as the global reserve currency for decades. And you see things like developments with the BRICS nations and suggestions for other currencies. Whenever Saddam Hussein started toying with the idea of having another currency, we killed him. Whenever Gaddafi started toying with the idea of having a gold-backed currency in Libya, we killed him. And what happened was China developed what's called the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a trade route throughout basically the entire region that was going to give China a monopoly over trade on like the entire fucking landmass in the hemisphere. And we couldn't allow that to happen because it subverts the interests of the dollar as the global reserve. So if they have a monopoly on trade, then they can use that to leverage their new digital currency or some other currency as a global reserve instead of ours. And if our currency collapses and the entire world economy collapses, we totally lose power, and then all the economic power flips to like China and Russia in the way that it has been the U.S. dominating over the last 50 years. And so what we did was we partnered with Israel to establish what's called the IMEC corridor, in India, Mediterranean. I can't even remember what it stands for, but it goes from India all the way through Saudi Arabia, and then it goes to the port in Haifa, Israel, and then up to Europe. And the idea was it was going to compete with the Belt and Road Initiative so that China wouldn't have a monopoly over trade. And ultimately, I think that's what all these conflicts in Israel are actually about. I don't actually think it's about a religious dispute or a land dispute. I think that Iran wants to subvert the dollar as the global reserve currency. Israel wants to keep the dollar as the global reserve currency because they're our ally, and that all of these conflicts are just like an excuse to go to war over the currency. And so like a month before October 7th happened, and Netanyahu's talking about this brilliant new IMEC corridor. He's got a map with the line on it, and he's pointing it out. And it's like, holy shit, this is like a competitor to the Belt and Road Initiative. China's going to hate this, right? Mm-hmm. Then they get attacked, and you realize in the New York Times reports that they had the information that they were going to be attacked for like 2 years in advance. The Mossad had the information of the attack. And then you realize, oh, it's on the 50th year anniversary of Yom Kippur. Of course they should have expected an attack on the anniversary of a major like war with these people, right? Like that's when terrorists attack on anniversaries all the time. Then you realize, oh shit, this IMEC corridor is no one's ever going to invest in this corridor if Haifa keeps getting bombed every few months by Hamas, because it does a lot. I mean, you can look at the news this week. Haifa's been getting bombed. Like, in order for this IMEC corridor to work to compete with China, they have to establish stability in Israel. And Israel's looking at the West Bank and Gaza and thinking, there's never going to be stability here because these people all married their cousins, and they've got IQs averaging under 85, and they fucking hate us. Mm-hmm. So we're never going to be able to work that out. How can we get rid of them? Well, if they attack us violently in a way that's very well documented on video, and women are raped and kidnapped and tortured, then the world will let us just genocide them, I think is what so I think they allowed it to happen as an excuse to wipe all of them out to stabilize the region so the dollar would be saved from the Chinese.
Oh my God.
That's what I think. And I think we were in on it too.
Whoa.
Yeah. I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's what I think happened.
No, and it's not that's not crazy.
Right.
And
well, in our intelligence community is thinking if the dollar collapses, millions of people are going to die.
Yeah.
So we should just allow thousands to die on this day on October 7th to save millions. And that's how they think. Utilitarian, Machiavellian, the end justifies the means. It's okay to allow 3,000 people to die on 9/11 if it means we can secure the dollar in the Middle East for the next 20 years, even though another 500,000 people will die, right? Like, that's how they think, and that's why they're fucking terrorists, because they don't think about individual rights. They think about utilitarian numbers. It's dangerous.
And wouldn't you say that it's arguably inevitable that the global reserve changes from USD to something else?
I think so.
That's why they're been talking about.
That's why they're setting up the central bank digital currency. They're trying to set up the new system before the existing one collapses, mm-hmm. and they don't want it to collapse before they have the next thing set up. That's what I think, but I don't know.
And then that's probably why so many people are anti-crypto, and they're trying to regulate it to death.
I think the CIA created Bitcoin as a beta test.
I heard that recently, yeah.
Do you know what Satoshi Nakamoto means in Japanese?
No, I don't.
Central intelligence.
Really?
Look it up. Look that shit up, Jamie. That works for you, dude. Oh, shit. He knows shit.
Yeah, he's got some Japanese.
I think that's what it means. I've heard mixed things.
So do you think that it is... I
think it's CIA.
Like, CIA.
They made it because they needed to beta test the technology, the blockchain technology behind it. I don't think Bitcoin's the problem. It's the blockchain technology they needed to test because that's what's used for central bank digital currency. So Bitcoin's probably honest, but the technology behind it had to be tested at scale in order to justify using the blockchain for this new CBDC, because even if they're going to roll that out, so then they can control every transaction. Like with the CBDC, if you have $1,000 as the central authority behind it, I can say that you can only spend 100 of that on gasoline, and you can only spend 100 of that on groceries, and your money literally will not work if you've gone over your allowance, even if you have infinite money. Like, I can just dictate what you spend on. That's how you can control an entire economy. So that's what I'm worried about. And if they set up that kind of a system in response to the collapse of the dollar, everybody will adopt it because the suffering will be so high, from the level of depression and just lack of resources. if the dollar collapses, that they'll just adopt anything new. And I think that's I agree that the dollar is inevitably going to collapse, but it's hard to say whether it's going to happen in 5 years or 100 years. You know, these things could be decades away from happening, or they could be months away from happening. The trick isn't predicting. The difficult thing isn't predicting what's going to happen. What's difficult is saying when. In my opinion.
Yeah, and that's kind of Ray Dalio's work too. Is like it's this thing that's
He's
way
brilliant
too big.
though. I read. Did you read Principles?
Yes. It's
good shit.
It was really.
Did you read
hard.
his new one too?
No, I did not.
It's good too.
No.
You can just go to ChatGPT and say what happens.
Yeah, and get the Sparks note. Yeah, I did the audiobook for Principles, and it's like 16 hours long or
it's
something.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to read it again.
Way over my head.
Did you read 48 Laws?
No. I've seen like little blips of it. And then I guess with 48 Laws, the tricky thing is that everyone's read 48 Laws, so then everyone is doing that to each other.
Nobody practices it. People just read it and think they're smart.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. It's like the Bible. Everybody's got a copy. I read it.
Yeah. Well, the thing with that though, what's your how do you read it? Like, do you read it and you're like, this is exactly what happened, or do you think that there's a lot of metaphors in it?
The Bible?
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's a good question. I think that the metaphorical meaning of most of the stories in the Bible is much more meaningful than whether it literally happened.
I agree.
But I also don't use metaphor as an excuse to dismiss. You know, a lot of people think, oh, it's just an allegory, and then they just like forget about it.
Say that doesn't matter because of that.
It's more true than if it was true sometimes. And I'm not saying that specifically about the Bible, but even Nathaniel Hawthorne said that fiction is a lie that tells the truth. And like, I'll give you an example. There's a story of the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament. Right, it was like this powerful box that God had as Jews make or whatever, and it had the 10 Commandments in it. And as long as they had the Ark of the Covenant, they could like not lose a battle, right? And one of the things God said was, "Don't touch it, right? Otherwise, you'll die." And they carried it on a platform as a result. It's like a box with these legs sticking out of it, and 4 guys would carry it right on every corner. And I think at one point in the Old Testament, there's a moment where it starts to slip off the platform, and one of the guys reaches out to keep it from hitting the ground, and as soon as he touches it, boom, bolt of lightning, dead, right? And a lot of Christians read that like, oh shit, like better obey God, like or you're fucked. But the message is actually, don't do the wrong thing for the right reasons. Like that's the message. It's not like a wrath of God thing. It's like when you do a bad thing, even if you have the right intentions, it still comes back to fuck you somehow, right? So to me, the metaphorical meaning of it is so much more powerful than just like, did it really happen or not? It's like, it's still true even if it's made up. And I think maybe that story did happen. I don't know. I don't care.
Right.
But like that lesson has stuck with me so much. There's so many times I want to like lie to my wife about whether or not I had a cigarette, because I don't want to like get in a fight. Doing lying would be the wrong thing for the right reasons in that event, right?
Yeah.
Just say, yeah, I smoked, like it's just easier, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. A lot of people just like to just totally dismiss the text because they write it off as a metaphor or a story, but it doesn't make it any less divine.
No, I agree. And then I also see the opposite, which is they take the very superficial story and then they don't look deeper into like, how could this apply to my life? And like, what is the real message or lesson that's being brought by this? And then I think the whole thing with any religion really is to find the way that you are perceiving it. Like, yes, there's truths in it, but 2 people could read the exact same passage and have a totally different perception, or like take different things. Yeah, you could do, and you should, right? You should be able to wrestle with these ideas and then like really challenge what you believe, and then you have these other people that are on this high horse, especially when it comes to religion, and they'll use that as their shield for the reason that they're behaving badly or that they're allowed to like be super judgmental against you, and then the only thing you're doing is just turning everyone away from the thing. Right. So I see that a lot, and we met when we were at the Blaze, and I forget how
hilarious fucking interview with Alex Stein. I
bet he is
he's so funny.
So
what's your number?
He had the Mexican Olympics on his show. It was either today or last night. And I'm like, no one else is going to get away with this. And he had this guy from El Salvador. And then this other guy, like that, I think was from Mexico. And he brought in a leaf blower and a lawnmower. And
they were in studio?
Yes. And they were doing obstacle courses. And he's clocking them. I was like, where does he get this from?
That's so fun. I just couldn't believe how dirty that fucking rug was.
I tried not looking. By the time our show was done, there was just like hot sauce everywhere. everywhere. And I was
Yeah.
just like,
Oh yeah, that's right. You did the hot sauce
yeah,
episode.
and he's
That's
just
pretty
like
funny.
rolling in it, and he's pouring it down his face. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I can't believe he's a vegetarian.
Oh yeah, I know, it's so surprising to me.
Hitler too.
It doesn't make
Practically the same guy. What if Hitler was exactly like Alex Stein? It's Stein, Stein.
And then it was just all just an act, like a
It was all
character.
just an act. Just kidding. I love to choose. Yeah, he's fucking hilarious. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's great.
He gave you a hard time though.
I thought he was really good. I didn't.
No,
think
he was fun. He wasn't like doing it to be hurtful.
Yeah,
or
he
anything.
wasn't mean.
But it was very like, as a viewer, I was like, oh shit. like there was a few times it was like.
See, I thought I was expecting way worse. I was expecting to just be laid out, but I thought he did a really good job at like keeping it funny and light, and still kind of like poking a little bit.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to be a dick.
No, but he did an episode with Brandy Love. Do you know?
Oh
yeah,
of course.
Brandy.
I have it on my podcast.
She blocked him. And
she got pissed about it? I saw they did it remote though.
It was on Chrissy Mayr's podcast.
She didn't realize it was like he was fucking around.
I don't know. I don't know. But
did he take it too far?
It's Alex, so like, what is too far is the question.
Yeah.
But he ended up calling her a whore. I think like he just was like, you're a whore, and like just all these derogatory terms. And like she got really pissed and blocked him, and then they had.
Well, she's actually a really sweet lady.
She's really sweet, and I was so
she
surprised.
Probably just didn't realize that he was like that was just
that
shtick.
he's a comedian too, right? And like
right.
he is. I don't know if he's Christian, but he I think he is. Is he Christian?
I never talked to him about it, but I assume.
I think he is.
I kind of get the vibe that
so
he is.
he obviously has like a different perspective on that industry than Brandy does.
Yeah, but like Mary Magdalene, she was an awesome whore.
I thought she wasn't. That's like the Catholic interpretation.
I think pretty sure she was a whore.
Yeah, I don't think so.
There's a lot of people other than Catholics who think she was. All I'm saying is I never met a whore I didn't like.
They're lovely people.
Yeah, all the whores in high school were the only ones that would hang out with me.
Did you see?
Oh, the cool girls hanging out with me? I gotta go over to the swamp.
Did you see that Dave Lando bit? He posted it on Instagram, so I feel like I'm allowed to share it. But he was talking about the shooter that tried to shoot Trump, and he's like, well, he certainly looked like a shooter, right? And he's like, are you sure that you don't just need a whore? Like, can we just buy you a lady of the night, and maybe your mood will change?
Well, like, you know what actually really fucking changed my perspective on whores was Game of Thrones.
Because the recent episodes,
no, like the original Game of Thrones series, the entire series, all of the whores in that show were like some of the best people. If you notice, if you go back and look, like except for Shay, she ended up being a real bitch.
She was awful.
Only at the end though.
Yeah.
Because she felt heartbroken and betrayed. But you understand the plight a little bit, I think, when you watch that show, what it's actually like to be a sex worker. And you're working for bad people a lot of the time, with bad people a lot of the time, and it's not because you're a bad person or immoral, but it's just because fucking shit's hard sometimes. And I don't know. I think a lot of people, I don't know why people get so pissed off about the sex work thing. I don't agree with it. I think it's probably like unhealthy to do, especially for a long time. I know that it's like distracting for young men to consume that shit sometimes. But I'm not gonna like pass any judgment. Like, fuck, man, there's so much shit that I do that's worse than being a whore. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't think I'm a better person than I don't know. It's like you were talking about. I think a lot of people throw a lot of stones in Christianity, and it alienates good people from being a part of it when they otherwise would. And that's why I actually do think, I could be wrong, but I think Mary Magdalene was a whore. And I think that's the point.
I always thought that, yeah.
I think that's the point, is like, if the Son of God can accept somebody who is considered the bottom of the fucking barrel of human beings, then if we don't learn from that, then we've failed as Christians, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I was raised Catholic by my mom's side, and that's what we were told she was. And then someone else was saying no, that's like specifically a Catholic interpretation. And the passage that talks about the woman that was the adulterer, like that might have been a different Mary. And then when people like Candace Owens, for example, because she like absolutely hates sex work and she lets it be known, and she hates whores in general. She did this episode with this porn star, and the poor lady like tried to prepare so much, and she was like reading all these Bible passages and just trying to like, because she assumed Candace would kind of approach it that way, and Candace is like, I wasn't going to approach it because I know you're not a Christian, so like you wasted all your time. And she's like, well, what about Mary Magdalene? And she's like, yeah, but it says specifically, because it's like, the who has not sinned cast the first stone, that part. And she's like, well, everyone always leaves out the end of it, which is and sin no more. So basically, if you're not listening to that part, then you should be allowed to cast the stones, is the way that I interpreted it. And like, that's just, how do you think that you're the good person in that scenario when that's your perspective? And again, to think that you're the only person that figured out the Bible, something that is thousands of years old and has all of these different perspectives, and you're like, my interpretation of it is the interpretation of it, and you're a bad person, and I'm allowed to tell you you're a bad person. And it just creates more divisiveness. And it's like, if you're trying to get people on your team, we have the country in like a really weird spot, and then you are constantly saying you're not pure enough to be in our group. Like, you see this a lot with the Conservative Party. So we had Amber,
well, you see it with the leftists too, not
letting people in.
Yeah, like if you're somebody who refuses to use pronouns, then like fuck you. You're, it's a different moral compass, right? So the Christians weaponize Christianity to alienate people, and they abuse it. And the leftists, I think, they weaponize some of the woke stuff.
Absolutely,
and abuse it. Like, it's just a different. It's like an.
I think the difference is, though, is that in my opinion, the left is kind of, they've been winning for a really long time. So that
certainly the culture war.
So they don't kind of need it. Like they don't need people in their club. Where the other side, like, you could use some more support.
That's a good point.
So if you're starting to get it, it's like, take the support, especially if it's genuine. Take the support because it's what's good for the country and it's what's good for everybody. But you saw Amber Rose.
Yeah.
She spoke for what, like a couple minutes.
She was fine.
And the
tattoo on her fucking forehead is distracting, though.
It is, and she's so beautiful.
I know.
That,
why would you fucking do that? If you're like a model, like you're known for being pretty, like, let's tattoo my face.
I know, but I mean that's just her. You
can't really get rid of that shit either, can you?
I think you can. They do cold laser now.
And it works.
My friend was covered, and a lot of her like really dark ones are totally gone.
No
you
shit.
Can't see anything. So I think she probably could. But she showed up minus the face tattoo. She looked like a lady.
She's fine.
She spoke beautifully, and she does have a huge platform. So when she comes and she's like, "Listen, I used to live life in this way." Founder of the Slut Walk. You know what I mean? Like, unapologetic.
What's the Slut Walk?
The Slut Walk? You've never seen the Slut Walk?
No.
Oh, so it's like it's this really big march, I guess, in LA.
So it's like Pride Month, but for sluts?
But for sluts. And then all these girls...
This is my shit.
all of these sluts show up, and some of them are topless, some are in pasties. They're all in like very provocative gear.
So yeah, it's just like women empowerment
Women empowerment, sexual empowerment. Like, I
it's
think
like, here, let me objectify myself to be empowered.
Right, yeah. And I guess like part of it too is the whole, just because I'm wearing this does not mean I'm saying yes. I think that's part of it.
I get it.
Which is fair.
I would go.
Right, just go, just spectate. I'm sure it's a blast.
Sure. I wouldn't take my kids
people.
though.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, I love a good gay bar. I have a great time. Pride Month, I don't understand why we're celebrating sexuality, but like, I was always okay with that. Never had like negative.
But when your kids start going.
But once the kids are going, and once you have people actually getting blowjobs in the street, and once you have guys on leashes, like, that's something else, right?
Yeah.
Like, certain things are meant for
it's
your
almost
bedroom.
like it's about the kids at a certain point.
Almost, it's like this weird obsession with like having kids have access to it, and I don't know. I mean, I do know why. Like, why are you having a drag queen read to kids? Why aren't they reading to like disabled veterans? Why is it a kid?
Disabled veterans allowed to read to was because they couldn't fucking move. They're like rolling, it's like the fucking wheels locked. Like, could you imagine that skid? Like, what the fuck? Lieutenant Dan.
It's like, I lost my legs for this.
Why aren't they reading to disabled? Disabled veterans can read to themselves. What the fuck? It's like disabled veterans don't need anybody to read to them.
Companionship.
Okay.
Companionship. And like, you've never read a story with your wife, like you've never shared a book or read
I don't read to my wife.
No?
No. Does your husband read to you?
Sometimes,
like
yeah.
What?
So one book that we do, we still haven't finished it. It's Einstein's Dreams, and he'll read it out loud before bed, and I just
Is
love
it just like formulas?
No,
like E equals MC.
So romantic. He knows how to get to me.
It's just fucking math. All right, and now for the proof of relativity.
No, it's a really beautiful book because it talks a lot about time and your perception of time, and I think especially if you're a parent with young kids.
So you'd be like getting ready to go to sleep, and he'll just be reading to you?
Yeah, like it's like they're quick
That's
little short
nice.
stories, and it talks about like one thing a lot of moms, I think, I don't know how much dads do this, but you're in this weird place with small kids where you want to like freeze the moment because it's just so amazing and you love it so much, but you know that you can't do that, nor is that like the best thing for the kid.
Right.
And
speaking of, I saw like a 6-year-old with a binky in the airport, and I almost said something this week. Today.
What do you do when that?
He was in a stroller. This kid's like in kindergarten. He's in a stroller with a bink, and he's getting backed into the bathroom. I'm like, I did a double take, and it was like gone.
And that's what that is, though. It's these moms that are holding their kids back from developmental milestones because that means that they're less dependent on me, and then therefore my self-worth
That's going to be a fucked up kid, though.
For sure, but it's not about the kid. It's about the mom, you know? Like, it's terrible. It's like Munchausen, or it's like that, what do you call it? Like that devouring mother complex.
Yeah.
It's just unhealthy, but like there are unhealthy, mentally unstable people. This is like less dark than that. It's just like that like pain that you kind of feel of raising small kids. And then it'll give you different stories about like how time exists differently in certain dimensions, like different possible realities.
So they made Einstein into like a Hallmark book?
It's really fascinating.
It's like Tuesdays with Maury meets Einstein.
No, it's really deep. It's really deep, and it'll make you think, and then you'll be like,
Einstein's Dreams?
Yes, I highly recommend it.
All right, I'll check it out. I'll start reading to my wife. She'll be like, what the fuck are you doing?
No, I promise it's going to be romantic. It will be romantic. And there's 5 minutes, not even.
Cool.
But like back in the day too, before like TV, you'd all sit in like the sitting room or the drawing room, and you'd have your fire, and someone would read as entertainment.
Do you think people did that?
Huh?
Do you think people did that?
Yeah. They didn't. What else would they do?
Sleep. Gotta wake up at the crack of dawn and cut wood.
Yeah, but before, like after dinner,
think Abraham
storytelling
Lincoln?
around the fire.
Yeah,
that's always been a thing.
Probably. I wasn't there.
I'm not saying vets can't read.
That's what she said, Candace. So why do the drag queens read to vets instead of little kids? That's the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life, by the way.
But you have to ask yourself that, or like the elderly. Why aren't they reading to the elderly? You know, like if they're saying that they're doing it because...
I actually have seen some clips of drag queens dancing at nursing homes, and the nursing home patients look terrified.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll see if I can save them in my bookmarks. I'll send it to you. It's fucking hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
It's like twerking and shit, and like the old people are just like throwing money.
What else am I gonna do?
Like, dollar just like floating down.
Oh no. No, but I guess going back to like who you allow in your club and not, you know, I think that there should be room for grace and for forgiveness, and not everyone is going to fit your idea of who is a quote like perfect good person. And if they're supporting like the values and principles of the party and the country, like let them in.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you. Well,
platform.
I think one of the problems that Christians make is similar to a problem that we in the West have made, or a mistake that we in the West have made. A lot of people think about what happened in Germany as like this fluke thing that this funny dude with the weird mustache did. But like, you don't learn about what happened by reading Mein Kampf. You learn about what happened by reading the speeches, because the speeches that Hitler gave from 20 to 33 were how he came to power. Mm-hmm. So if you read the speeches, you know that this is what resonated with the people that he was speaking to. He started out in beer halls with like 7 people, and then it ended up being thousands upon thousands. And you realize that what happened with Nazism was what happened by an entire people. It's not something that happened to a people or a spell that was cast on a people. It was something that actually came from the people. Like Hitler was inevitable out of those people. He did not make them that way. They made him, right? Mm. And you have to realize, whether you're Jewish or American or German or whatever, the lesson of World War II is not that a rogue madman committed evil atrocities. The lesson of World War II is that we are all susceptible and vulnerable and capable of doing the same thing in the right conditions, right?
And that's a hard thing to consider.
Right. It's a very hard thing to consider. And that's the problem I have with what we're talking about with a lot of people within Christianity, is they think of themselves as better people for whatever reason, and it's a level of self-righteousness that doesn't make that, it's not justified by better actions. It just makes them ignorant of their own sin. Like, you know, they don't realize their own sin because they think so much about the sin of others that they don't even know, like, when they're fucking being vain or super. And a lot of sin is not even an action. Like, you could live your whole life without actually doing anything wrong, but you could be just like rotten inside, you know? So I don't know, maybe some people just feel like the only way to get close to God is to recognize the sin of others, and they feel like it propels them relatively in some direction, but it's really fucked up. you don't really hear a lot of the disciples spending their time talking about other people's sin. Not so much. Just encouraging people to repent. I don't know. I just don't give the only people that I criticize really are globalists and pedophiles, because I'm happy throwing those stones. I can answer for those stones because I'm not a fucking globalist. I'm not a pedophile. Mm-hmm. So I'll throw stones at those people all the time. But pretty much every other sin, I'm just as guilty at some point.
Yeah, the pedophile topic is really fascinating to me because it's evil. I think, like, point blank stop. Like, there's nothing else to really elaborate. But for some reason, we have these pseudo intellectuals that are trying to make sense of this
maps
thing.
Minor attracted persons.
Right, and they're
like, no, fuck you, pedophiles.
And they're like, we're trying to destigmatize it. And, excuse me, that needs to be stigmatized heavily. Yeah. Heavily, for a reason. You're trying to protect children that are vulnerable, can't protect themselves. That person deserves to be publicly shamed and go to jail at the very least. And if I had my way, it'd be something else.
Let me tell you what needs to happen to pedophiles. Here's what needs to happen. Somebody is convicted in a fair trial of committing an act of sexual act on a minor. Once they're convicted, they need to be sentenced to death by firing squad. Now, the parents of the children or family members of the children should have first dibs, but the entire community should be able to put their name in a hat for $5. And you can spend as much as you want for as many entries. And they should draw names from the hat. They raise millions of dollars, put your name in to be on the firing squad. And I think we should publicly kill all of them immediately. No prison. No, oh my gosh, they're getting beat up in prison. What do we do to protect them? No chemical castration like they're trying. Work. No, I don't think so. I think it makes it even worse because I think a lot of the pedophile shit is about like dominance and inferiority complexes. And if you make somebody even more inferior, then they're like more likely to you might even exacerbate it. I don't study it because it's so disgusting to me, but I do think that we should absolutely kill all of them, 100%, as a community in public, Salem witch trial style. Just fucking kill them all. 100%.
See, and then that is going to be considered more outrageous than the people that are trying to defend and
Well, I'll tell you what, if you touch one of my kids, I will take your life personally. I don't care. I will sleep so well in fucking prison, 3 hots and a cot every single fucking night. I would be happy to fucking kill anybody that touches my kids. Mm-hmm. And every father should be like that.
I agree.
And it wouldn't happen as often if guys just would come out and like make it very well known. Mm-hmm. If you fuck with my kid, I will kill you. I will kill you. Absolutely 100%. I'll ask God for forgiveness later. Probably won't even need it. Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah, and do you know who Jillian Michaels is? Mm-mm. So she used to do The Biggest Loser. She was one of the trainers, really pretty, like ripped lady. Yeah. So she recently has been doing a lot of podcasts. She is self-identified as like a liberal. Mm-hmm. She's a lesbian. One of her parents is Arab. The other one is Jewish. She has
Jesus Christ! Imagine that house. They're always fighting over who gets a seat on the couch. You had the big chair last night.
Just splitting it up. She's like,
it's not Palestine, it's Haifa.
She's like, basically, I have all of your woke playing cards. Like, I win this deck. Right. And she left California. And she was, guess she was just learning about the Romeo and Juliet laws and how they changed for specifically the gay community. And this is all Scott Wiener because he's a total perv and all of his laws are just about kids, conveniently. And this Romeo Juliet law within like a gay context is 10 years. So you can have a 14-year-old and a 24-year-old, and then that is not
10 years?
10 years.
So you could have a 20-year-old and an 11-year-old.
I think it's
or starts at the age 14.
I think it starts at 12 or 13.
So like
but
puberty.
Still a kid, That's very much a kid. And she's like, let me tell you, if anyone is touching my 12-year-old daughter and he's 22, I'm going to use my gun. I was like, whoa, she's got a gun.
When I was 23, I dated an 18-year-old and I felt weird about that. And she was 18 because on her Tinder profile, she said she just graduated. And I thought from college because I just graduated from college. And I met her and she was 18. I was like, oh, well, she's 18. But I remember feeling weird about it. I could not fucking imagine being 23 and dating a 13-year-old.
Yeah, disgusting.
It's fucking bizarre.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Because even though 18, like we agree 18 is the age of consent, at least in most states. Yeah. It's the whole social context around that also creates the maturity and the psychology of that person. So high school at 18 is very different than college at 19.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like it's just a totally different environment and you're still so dependent on your parents. It's like you're still kind of a kid at 18 even though we say that you're not.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, my whole theory about it is if you're old enough to storm the beach in Normandy, you're old enough to decide if you can have sex.
Yeah, I agree.
And there were like 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds that were on that beach. I mean, there were people that lied about their age that were 16 on that beach. That doesn't make it right to sleep with the 16-year-olds, not what I'm saying. But, I mean, at a certain point, you got to draw a line. And I think that our culture makes excuses for adults to act like children way too long, like we were talking about with the Binky thing. But a lot of that's because of inflation. So we went off the gold standard in the 70s. Hyperinflation happened under Carter. And then now our dollar is so worthless that it's almost financially impossible for kids to move out of the house when they're 18. When it was possible 50 years ago, a lot of people started families when they were 18. My parents got married when they were 23 and started having kids right away and had their own house. No problem. Already done with college. And it's just so financially difficult to accomplish that now that we have like 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds, 30-year-olds even that still act like college kids or seniors in high school, because financially speaking, it's been like very difficult for them to just get to the point where they can even afford to get out of the basement, even if they're trying, I think. And I try not to make excuses to treat people as a culture as children when they aren't supposed to be, even though economically speaking, there's a lot of pressure for them to remain in a kind of childlike mindset.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's probably part of it. But even like the idea of moving out, especially a young couple moving out and getting their own home, is relatively new, because it used to be you'd have the family farm or the family plantation, and like you would have your own space, but you were all working together, and and you would have multiple generations on the same.
So you want to go back to plantations?
Honestly, a compound, absolutely. I would do a compound with enough land.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want my kids on like in the same immediate space, but like I love that concept. And there's this idea that it was actually kind of propagandized by mortgage companies because they wanted more people buying houses. So they were like, oh, you're 18, dream. You need to be able to like get busy with your lady and not have mom and dad right there. Buy your own house. And then they started to kind of split up the family that way.
Interesting. I haven't ever heard of it like that. I'll have to look more into that.
There's this
Makes
book.
Sense.
It's called
Einstein's?
The myth, no, not
Einstein's Dream House?
the myth of normal. It's really good book. It's huge.
Who wrote it?
I don't remember her name.
I was a woman.
Here's the thing. Listen, I almost threw it away when I first started reading it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so woke and I don't want to waste my time. And then I was like, give it a chance. And I read it and it is not. It's like very factual, very historically accurate.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Right.
And
even
it
if it's written by
leftists,
I'll still read it.
Yeah, I don't know
if it's good.
I don't know if she is or not.
Did you ever read any Yuval Noah Harari, like Sapiens or anything like that?
No, my husband has all those books. And then I'm so disappointed because it seemed like he was such a brilliant, like, grounded person. And then he kind of went off the hinges and he seems like a globalist now.
So did Sam Harris.
Oh, and then that's crazy because he was Mr. Consciousness, right? Like,
yeah, and then Destiny. They all go nuts eventually because leftism is a mental illness. And when it ultimately culminates in existential crisis.
So what is the difference between leftism, progressivism, and being a Democrat? Because you mentioned
they're all the same. They're all the same now.
Do you think so?
They didn't used to be, but yeah.
So when you say that you're a liberal, to me, what I think
I don't say I'm a liberal.
No, a person. When
I was going to say, fuck you, lady.
This is over.
Why don't you go read us some veterans?
When someone says that they're a liberal,
yeah,
what I think are liberal principles like freedom of speech, like individual rights.
Well, that would technically be a classic liberal. A classical liberal is somebody who believes in that stuff.
And then wouldn't
But it shifted. Classical liberalism shifted. Like the liberals aren't like that anymore. I mean, they obviously don't believe in freedom of speech if they're the party of censorship.
Correct.
They don't believe in private property rights if they're the party of taxation. They don't believe in freedom of religion if they're the party of abortion, right? Because there's a lot of people, regardless of what your feelings are on abortion, there are a lot of people that for religious reasons feel very uncomfortable paying for it via tax dollars to Planned Parenthood, right? And so you're forcing people to pay the taxes into a system that does something to the unborn that is against their religion, right? Regardless of how you feel, like that alone, they should be exempt from that tax at least, right? So
I didn't know that Planned Parenthood was funded by tax dollars.
I think it gets federal money. I'll have to double check.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the fact that you didn't know that is making me second guess it, but I would have been like 99% sure otherwise. So I'll have to double check. But yeah, I'm almost positive.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was initially created for the purpose of reducing the population growth in black communities.
Well, yeah, Margaret Singer, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But I'll have to look more into it. I do believe they get tax dollars. I could be wrong about that.
That would not be okay.
Yeah.
You can't fund that. You can't people forced
right.
to pay that. Have you seen? What's your take on IVF? There's the guy that's running. I don't even know his name. He's Kamala's VP.
Oh, Tim Walz?
Yeah, and
I'm just glad she chose a German instead of a Jew. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he had some clips going around, and he's trying to relate to the common person, which I think is hysterical, given that he allowed all of the everyday people to have their businesses destroyed.
Burned down. Yeah.
But now you're trying to be relatable.
Yeah.
But one of his talking points was on IVF, and he's said, like, mind your own damn business. And he's trying to be all tough and say that should be completely unrestricted. And then he was also talking about there's no guarantee on free speech when it comes to misinformation or hate speech, which you just gotta love.
I challenged him to a lawful duel under Texas Penal Code 2206. I want to fist fight Tim Walz if he's such a tough guy. I don't have a problem with IVF.
No.
I think depopulation is a huge crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm behind Elon Musk on this. I think the idea that we have a population problem, that we're growing too much, is totally anti-human, antithetical to success. We obviously have population decline going on. And so I understand that people have religious qualms with IVF.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to even get involved in that argument. I think if you want to have kids and you have to pay $50,000 to get it done, great. As long as you want to have kids and raise them in a healthy way, that's good. I think we need to be focusing on things that produce life rather than things that reduce it. I mean, the same reason I'm pro IVF is the same reason I'm kind of against abortion, is because I think we should be having more humans as much as possible, especially in America. More Native Americans. What do you think?
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
I get, I don't know.
If you were unable to have children, would you have done IVF?
Before having kids, yes, because I was told I was infertile my whole life. Like, I had some autoimmune issues and told there was a 0% chance.
Did you go on the carnivore diet and it fixed it?
No, I did a lot of like other spiritual woo stuff though. Like I got a
like
shaman
black magic?
And not black magic, but I did get a shaman.
Did you do peyote in the desert?
I did do psychedelics, not peyote specifically, and I got
ayahuasca.
I psilocybin, and I got pregnant 2 weeks later.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
I have a crazy psilocybin story too.
Do you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed.
Why?
I don't know.
You should know this shit if you've done it. We should be tapped into the same plane.
Maybe, yeah. But that's probably why you're here.
I saw a symbol drawn on the wall, and I didn't know what it was, and I Googled it the next day, and it was a Zoroastrian symbol, a spirit guide.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a trip.
Yeah, so I don't think...
What did you see?
Oh my gosh. Oh, it gets crazy. The first time I did it, not a lot. I feel like it was more somatic, my experience. And
yeah,
then,
me too.
And then I did it again, and I think a certain level of surrender needs to happen for you to have access to different things. I saw these like little creatures.
Do they wear like the clown face?
No, they were definitely not good. They were really scaly. They kind of looked like a little dragony kind of, but they were like that big, and one had red eyes, one had yellow eyes.
You didn't like them?
I didn't like them. I knew they weren't good, and they kept trying to like what looked like a force field around me, like a whole bunch of hexagons in a pattern, like a bubble, and they
like a honeycomb shit.
Yeah, and they were trying to like pierce through, and I was like, if you're not of the light, you have to leave. Like, if you're of darkness, you gotta get out of here. And I had like a spiritual teacher tell me that. So he's like, if you see an entity of any kind, you always have to say that, because you never know if it's good or bad, and they can be very mischievous. So you have to like make it very clear that if you are not of light energy, goodness, to leave and like cast them out of your space. So I saw them, and then later I saw this. It looked like a tribal ancient language just written everywhere. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I can't read it. And my husband's like, well, because you said that, now you can't read it. But if you went into it and you're like, I can read it, you might have been able to understand what it was saying. But I refuse to believe that it's simply just a hallucination and there's no meaning to it, because it's like, why does everyone see the same fractals or the same geometric shapes or the same language that they can't these things repeat across people, time, space, culture.
What if it's really what if you translate it and it's literally just Joe Biden's inauguration speech?
I'd be so disappointed.
Just Kamala,
it's just like information that's passing in the ether. That would be so disappointing.
It's like no enlightenment. It just sucks. We spent generations trying to crack this alien code, and all it gave me was Joe Biden's inauguration speech.
No, I think it's probably like ancient like I don't know, rules or truths or something.
So
I don't know.
You think you definitely believe in the spirit world and like other entities and
absolutely.
stuff? Do you identify as Christian?
No, I don't.
So you don't think Jesus is the Messiah?
I think Jesus was a real person. I think that he had a really powerful relationship to God,
but not like the savior of mankind.
I don't know that is. Yeah, I don't know that that's something I believe, that that you would need someone else to save you. Do you know, like, because there's the idea before Jesus, right? Like you were just kind of doomed.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception.
Yeah, because that doesn't make sense. Like if you think about
the idea is that like during the Garden of Eden, the story of it, regardless of whether you think of it literally or not, there's the original sin with the apple, right? And then there's the fall of man, which is why we die, right? Jesus said, "Now you'll die and you have to work by the sweat of your brow and shit." So in order to break that curse, there had to be a human being that lived a life free of sin, and Jesus accomplishing that like broke it so that we can all be forgiven. And like there's some hope. That's like the general kind of retarded explanation. So you don't believe Jesus is that guy?
No, I think
you're fucked. You're so fucked.
No, yeah, eternal brim. What is it? Limestone. Yeah, I'm just. Yeah. It's gonna be sulfur from then on out.
He'll be all right.
No, I think. Yeah, again, I think that he was a really important person. I think that there was a really real connection to God, but I don't know necessarily. I've heard someone talk about the crucifixion that was really interesting. Do you know who Duncan Trussell is?
Oh yeah.
So
former Satanist.
Is he a former Satanist?
I don't know.
Well, he's talked about Satanism in like a really interesting way that I haven't heard it. Like he talked about this couple that he met that I guess is part of one of the churches of Satan, and it's like not what you think. It's not devil worship. It's like a different form of Christianity.
Right. They think God's an asshole.
Yeah, but authoritarian and anti-free will and all of that. But he was talking about the crucifixion, and the way that he talks about Christianity, I always like light up and like get super tuned in because it's just really fascinating. Like his perspective. I'm not saying it's right, but I find it really interesting. And he was talking about one representation of the crucifixion is like you're being the reason that you suffer. So like the suffering, the reason that that's there is because you're split. You are a finite being with an infinite soul. So that split makes it the suffering kind of inevitable within space and time. And like that's kind of like the both sides of the crucifixion is like being torn between those two things of being mortal and immortal, and like infinity, and then something that has like a time and presence, and like the whole lesson of that is to be present with wherever you are and not to constantly be in the future or the past.
That lines up with what Jesus said. Don't worry about tomorrow, for today has enough troubles of its own.
And it's not saying that he wasn't crucified. It's just like one way to look at it. But I don't knock Christianity. I think it's beautiful. It's really good for a lot of people. I just hate when I see religion misused in a way, or like weaponized.
Do you think that's the reason that you're not Christian, is because you don't like a lot of Christians?
Well, the way that I look at Christianity is follower of Christ, right? So it's not necessarily a religion, but a way to live your life. And
do you consider yourself a follower of Christ?
No, because I don't. It's not like an active part of my day to day. Like I feel like if I were to do that, I would have to be a lot more disciplined with his teaching specifically. I think there's a lot of beauty to it, but like the way that I look at it is less defined. Like when I think about God, or I think about morality, or like being a good person, it's less to like that one specific doctrine. And I'm sure if I were to follow those, I would probably agree with 99% of it. So it's not like an aversion. It's just I don't want to take something that I think is so so impossible to fully understand and then try to dumb it down by putting like words or labels on it, because I think it's so much bigger than that.
So you think that whatever's true is cooler than Christianity?
I think it's so much more. I think Christianity is it's probably
like
a
God is greater than Christianity.
For sure.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
I think it's like one way to condense it to keep people on a path that's going to get them to where we should be, and that's fine. But I think that there's all this other stuff.
Do you think the world would be a better place if everybody was Christian, genuinely Christian, or if everybody was Muslim?
Well, obviously Christianity. I think anyone that says.
What about any other religion? Like, was there another religion that the world would be better?
I do like Buddhism. My issue with most of the sects of Buddhism is that they don't believe in souls, and I think we absolutely have a soul.
Buddhists always get invaded.
Some of them fight. What is that one movie?
Look what happened to Tibet.
7 years in Tibet.
Yeah, they got their ass kicked.
They did, but they fought. They tried to fight.
Doesn't matter if you lose. Didn't you watch the Olympics this week? That man beating the snot out of that girl?
I haven't watched.
She tried.
I haven't watched.
She said she'd never been hit that hard in her face in her life.
But that's the thing. Because we've taken it so far, now everything is being questioned. You could have, and I'm not saying this about this specific, I think that both of those boxers were male, like XY chromosomes.
Yeah.
But the conversation, like there was a rugby player, and this woman seems so sweet. Like I don't know why people are so mean to her, but she is like more masculine, but she's a fucking rugby player. She's supposed to be, right?
Right.
And she did this like little dance intro thing, and everyone was saying it was a man. And that sucks. Like, that's gotta suck so
You
much.
think she's just an ugly woman?
She's not even ugly. She's just like really masculine. Because there's times where you see
What
her.
about Michelle Obama?
Big Mike. I do think it's weird that there's no pregnancy pictures.
It's hard to find pregnancy pictures of other first ladies from the 20th century,
is it?
too. You can find Jackie and I think one other.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think a lot of women took pictures of themselves pregnant until cell phones. Just culturally, I just think they skipped that part. Maybe I'm wrong. But like maternity pictures were like an early 2000s thing.
But like there's not pictures with you out like eating on a date with your husband or at
People
a
weren't
birthday
carrying
party.
cameras around.
Okay, fair.
You know? Like we all have phones, so we take so many more pictures.
I think she's a woman.
But it's definitely like you wouldn't be surprised if it came out she was a man.
Because we let it go so far. Like if we weren't
You think Barack is gay?
Yes.
Why?
I think that you can just kind of
You just tell.
I have
He
a
gives you a
pretty
gay
good
vibe?
I have a good gaydar. I think I have a pretty decent gaydar. And then interesting, so I had a relative that worked Secret Service for a certain president, and I'll tell you after this, but like 100% gay, and 100% lesbian, and you would just like not know, but the couple was kind of put together for political reasons to get to where they needed to go, but they were not sleeping with each other unless it was to have kids.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff happens. Like people have this plan, and you know they want to get power at any means possible.
Well, I've heard that Hillary was 100% lesbian by people that have worked in hospitality. That's what I've heard.
And they would know. Because you see who's coming in and going out. Yeah.
Right.
But
now Huma Abedin is banging Alex Soros.
Who and who?
Huma Abedin was Anthony Weiner's wife that was always with Hillary. And Anthony Weiner went to jail, and now Alex Soros is George Soros' son, who's taken over the estate, and he's marrying Huma Abedin. They're like in their 40s, I think.
Yeah.
It seems like a political match.
Yeah, sure, it certainly does.
He looks pretty gay. But I don't care.
I don't care either.
I don't care if people are gay. I just don't like it when they lie about it.
Yeah, because it's
like,
not
why
necessary.
aren't you why are you afraid to be yourself?
Yeah, it's not necessary. Because then you see the coupling, and then you can see the strategy, and then it's not authentic.
Right.
So you have to put on the face.
Do you think anybody in DC is happily married?
That's a good question.
I mean, even Trump and Melania seem kind of cold.
I used to think that, and then I saw her letter that she posted after the assassination attempt, and it just seemed like a woman who loves him.
Yeah, but she could love him without like being in love with him.
Yeah.
You know?
Probably not. I think when you're in that situation, you're either under so much stress and duress that it's impossible to really deeply connect with somebody, or it turns you into a total monster.
Jesus.
So don't get into politics unless you absolutely have to or are called to.
I'd rather fight the InfoWar from the InfoWars headquarters. I don't ever want to be a politician. What about you?
No. But I guess now I have that option, right? Like Trump had the whole thing with Stormy Daniels, and then you have Amber Rose that's getting platformed at the RNC. So I mean,
you could just make a claim.
Yeah, I could. No, I think what Stormy did is like totally.
Do you think he actually slept with her?
Yeah.
Me too.
I do.
But I don't care at all.
I don't care. I wish
I just think it's cool that he had to pay her not to brag about it.
And then she sold.
And
her
I'm not
book,
supposed to vote for him.
And then she sold a book for $8 million.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know she looks a little wonky now, but in 2006 she was looking pretty good still, right?
Yeah, I mean she was fine, and
yeah, there were so many ads after the story came out on like Pornhub and shit. I don't know if you remember. Oh, every fucking ad was a Stormy Daniels ad, like when it originally came out like 10 years ago.
And no one in the industry even likes her. So like.
She doesn't seem very likable.
She doesn't seem
seems
likable.
like a bitch.
And then you did this thing, and you bragged about this thing in so many different articles.
After signing an NDA not to do it.
Yeah.
So you're a fucking bitch.
And then all of a sudden he's a terrible guy, and you were scared.
Please, like, all the presidents fuck horse. Look at Marilyn Monroe and JFK.
Yeah, everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
Everyone, left, right, and center.
100%.
Right, and they're two adults, so I don't care. That's not my business. Either.
But he technically lied about it if he actually did it.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Gotta get that evangelical vote. Gotta get Candace Owens to back you. If you admitted it that you did it, Candace Owens would have to vote for somebody else, right?
Well, then she would just blame the woman and not the man.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
She's just. I don't want to say anything bad about Candace.
Oh, I've said plenty of things bad.
I know, but I don't want to.
Yeah, she's just. I used to like her. Like back in.
Did you read her book Blackout?
No, but I bought it. I bought it to support her. I thought she was like doing really great stuff, and I liked.
I heard
her
that she
platform.
charges like an arm and a leg to speak at events and shit. Like,
Probably.
she's just fucking making money off this whole thing.
No, she's got like a really dedicated base now.
Yeah.
But then the way that she presents, this is my
and the way that she fucked over the Daily Wire was kind of like the way Stormy Daniels fucked over Trump.
Similar.
You know, just like talking a whole bunch of shit. Maybe it was about the Jewish thing. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
I think it was probably she was really difficult to work with.
I bet she was difficult to work with, and nobody fucking watched her show when she was there. I know a lot of people are watching her stuff now. Great. But like the Candace show at the Daily Wire started out with a studio audience. Then suddenly the studio audience disappears. And it's like, I hadn't seen a viral clip of Candace until she stopped working at the Daily Wire. I think that they wanted to let go of her because she sucked.
Well, the thing is that you can only be outraged for so long. And then if your mission is to actually do something to improve the state of the world or people, or to get people to be more conscious of their decision making, and like you write like all these things that are of a higher consequence, you're not getting there by yelling at people, berating them, making them feel like fools, or telling them every single way that they're a terrible person. Like if you reach with like aggression like that, you're never going to convert someone. So when you talk like that, you're just talking to your base, and that doesn't create any kind of change. Right? You're just getting the people that already like you to like cheer for you. Right. So you should be trying to grow, and that circles back to the whole RNC thing. Like you already have those people, that's great, but like get more people. And how do you do that? You have to have somewhat of open arms. I'm not saying like let the drag queen kids story hour people in, right? That doesn't align with values, principles, but there should be less of a barrier of entry than what currently
Do you remember
exists.
when TPUSA wouldn't let Brandy Love?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like the biggest MAGA.
And then Alex Stein is fucking making fun of her.
She's like shooting drone. Like there was a drone that was going over one of her pieces of property and trying to like take video of her. And she went out, got her shotgun, and shot the drone down. And the guy had the audacity to say that he was going to call the police. And she's like, "Fucking call him. That's my airspace." You know, like
that's my airspace.
She's awesome. I really love
really
Brandy.
cool.
And she loves America. And it's like we need more of that.
I think so too. I think they should let her stay.
Yeah. Okay. We have a funny segment that David, one of my producers, wanted to do with you. So it is Kamala Harris or a child. So I'm going to say a sentence, and you have to guess if it was Kamala or a child. Number 1, Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country.
That's Kamala. I know that quote. I've listened to the audio.
Yep, that one's Kamala. Number 2, I love Hanukkah because it's really about the light and bringing light where there has been darkness, and there is so much work to be done in the world to bring light.
Kid.
Kamala.
Okay, shit, that wasn't that bad. That's why I gave it to the kid.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. Number 3 is space is exciting. Space, it affects us all.
That's Kamala.
And it connects us all. Kamala. Number 4, the wheels on the bus go round and round.
That's also Kamala. That was when she saw her campaign bus. I work at InfoWars, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I know all.
Yeah, and it's all Kamala, so that's gonna be who's potentially.
Sorry, I shouldn't have cut him off because those quotes are hilarious.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah,
do the wheels on the bus go round and round one?
No, that was it. That's all he put. Because he's like, they're all Kamala. It's like the one that's like, maybe that one is the kid.
Right.
Like, no, that is potentially the future.
Yeah, Ukraine's a
leader
country. Russia's a much bigger country. They are next to each other.
like, what are you talking about?
She's a lunatic. But not to be underestimated.
Yeah, I think that's so surprising, but I trust your opinion on that. Yeah, I don't like his other thing, but where was I? I was gonna pull up a chat GPT thing. Yeah, what's interesting, have you read the criticism of populism before we wrap this up?
What do you mean?
Like if you were to try to Google it or like chat GPT it.
I have a book called The Populist Delusion, which I read, which was a criticism of it, but go ahead. You can read it.
Not of the book specifically, about the idea of populism.
Right.
So it said exactly what you were saying at the beginning, which is it's people against the elite. That seems like a good thing.
Yep. Unless you're elite.
Unless you're elite. It says it simplifies complex issues, but I think everyone does that. I don't think that's specific to anything.
You don't think the Democrats simplify complex issues? You just listen to those quotes by Kamala Harris talking about space being exciting and shit.
It's super exciting, inspiring.
Yeah, and Russia's a big country and Ukraine's a small country. You don't think that's simplifying issues?
Did you just fall out of a coconut tree?
Oh my God.
You didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. Erosion of democratic norms.
Yes, exactly. Great.
Right. And economic inefficiency, which I thought that one is interesting.
Prove it.
Nationalism, since when is that a bad thing? Like
the Nazis.
we're okay.
The Nationalist Socialist Party. That's what
But
they're
they were also racist. It was
Yeah,
it was
right.
a lot more than
Populism
nationalism.
is like nationalism light.
Charismatic leadership risks.
Oh, God forbid we have a charismatic leader.
We've never done that. We've never done that. And then short-termism.
Short-termism?
Short-termism.
Just call it shortism.
Shortism.
It's like autism, but shorter. It goes away.
Populist leaders may focus on immediate visible success to maintain popularity, often at the expense of long-term planning and stability. But yeah, I'm like, I don't.
So if like put like all the federal funding into like a giant screen TV that you could see from like all across the continent, so that everybody could watch the same movie at night.
Just have like a ticker running.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Total waste of money, but everybody kind of likes it.
because we're all just like a little bit masochistic
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Well, shit.
Well, where can everyone pick up your book?
Just follow me at Real Chase Geiser. Book's linked in the bio.
Awesome.
It's everywhere. It's in bookstores. It's everywhere.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
It's been an honor and pleasure.
Yeah,
Did I
had
do a
blast.
good job?
You did a great job.
You promise?
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Thank you. I was a little fumbly in the beginning, and then the toesy
The
part.
beginning, I thought it was going to go real bad.
Real bad.
I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
You're like, why
Tozy
why
was
am I here?
hilarious. And when you said the veterans needed drag queens to read to him, that's some good shit. That's some coconut tree level shit.
Oh God. Yep. It's fine.
It was
I'm
a
not
lot of
gonna
fun.
always bat 1,000, but yeah, thank you so much for coming. I had a great time.
Me too.
And if you're still watching, hopefully you are, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.